The battle of Cutheringside. Howard was brought unto the Lord Corineus, that the lords Jos and Brandosh were come again into the land, and how he resolved to give them battle on the side under Erngate end, and of the great flank march of Lord Brandosh over the mountains from Transdale, and of the great battle, and of the issue thereof. Laxus and those sons of Corrund walked on an afternoon in Crotheringhome mead. The sky above them was hot and coloured of lead, presaging thunder. No wind stirred in the trees that were livid green against that leaden pall. The noise of mattock and crowbar came without intermission from the castle, where gardens had been, and arbours of shade and sweetness, was now but wreck, broken columns, and smashed porphyry vases of rare workmanship, mounds of earth and rotting vegetation. And those great cedars, emblems of their lord's estate and pride, lay prostrate now with their roots exposed, a tangle of sere foliage and branches broken, withered, and lifeless. Over this deathbed of ruined loveliness the towers of onyx showed ghastly against the sky. "Is there not a virtue in 7?" said Cargo. "Last week was the 6th time we thought we had gotten the eel by the tail in yon fly-blown hills of Mealand, and came empty home." "When think'st, Laxus, shall's run 'em to earth indeed? When egg-pies shall grow on apple trees," answered Laxus. "Nay, the general setteth greater store by his proclamations concerning the young woman, who likely never heareth of them, and assuredly will not be by them ticed home again, and by these toys of revenge, than by sound soldiership. Hark, there goeth this day's work." They turned at a shout from the gates, to behold the northern of those 2 golden hippogriffs totter and crash down the steeps into the moat, sending up a great smoke from the stones and rubble which poured in its wake. Lord Laxus's brow was dark. He laid hand on Hemming's arm, saying, "Ah, the times need all sage counsel we can reach unto, O ye sons of Corrund. If our lord the king shall have indeed from this expedition into Demonland the victory at last of all his evil willers. Remember, that was a great miss to our strength when the goblin went." "Out upon the viper," said Cargo. Corineus was right in this, not to warrant him the honesty of such slippery cattle. He had not served above a month or 2, but that he ran to the enemy. "Corineus," said Laxus, "is yet but green in his estate. Doth he suppose the rest of his reign shall be but play, and the enjoying of a kingdom? Those left-handed strokes of fortune may yet o'erthrow him, the while that he streameth out his youth in wine and venery, and manageth his private spite against this lady. Slipper youth must be underpropped with elder counsel, lest all go miss." "A most reverend old counsellor art thou," said Cargo. "Of 36 years of age," said Hemming. "We be 3. Take command thyself. I and my brother will back thee." "I will that thou swallow back those words," said Laxus, as though they had never been spoke. "Remember Corsus and Galandus. Besides, albeit he seemeth now rather to be a man straught than one that hath his wits, yet is Corineus in his sober self a valiant and puissant soldier, a politic and provident captain, as is not found besides in Demonland, no, nor in Witchland neither, and it were not your noble father, and this one in his youthly age." "That is true," said Hemming. "Thou hast justly reproved me." Now, while they were a-talking, came one from the castle, and made obeisance unto Laxus, saying, "You are inquired for, O king. So please you to walk into the north chamber." Said Laxus, "Is it he that was newly ridden from the east country?" "So it is, so please you." With a low leg he made answer, "Hath he not had audience with King Corineus?" "He hath sought audience," said the man, "but was denied. The matter presseth. And he urged me, therefore, seek unto your lordship. As they walked toward the castle, Hemming said in Laxus's ear, Knowest thou not this brave new piece of court ceremony? Or these days, when he hath stroyed an hostage to spite the Lady Mevrian, as today was stroyed the horse-headed eagle, he giveth not audience till sundown. For, the deed of vengeance done, retireth himself to his own chamber, and a wench with him, the daintiest and gamesomest he may procure. And so, for 2 hours or 3, drowned in the main sea of his own pleasures, he abateth some little deal for a season, the pang of love. Now, when Laxus was come forth from talking with the messenger from the east, he fared without delay to Corineus's chamber. There, thrusting aside the guards, he flung wide the shining doors, and found the Lord Corineus merrily disposed. He was reclined on a couch, deep cushioned with dark green 3-pile velvet. An ivory table inlaid with silver and ebony stood at his elbow, bearing a crystal flagon, already 2 parts emptied of the foaming wine, and a fair gold goblet beside it. He wore a long, loose, sleeveless gown of white silk, edged with a gold fringe. This, fallen open at the neck, left naked his chest and one strong arm, that in that moment when Laxus entered reached out to grasp the wine-cup. Upon his knee he held a damosel of some 17 years, fair and fresh as a rose, with whom he was plainly on the point to pass from friendly converse to amorous privacy. He looked angrily upon Laxus, who without ceremony spoke, and said, The whole East is in a tumult. The burg is forced which we built astride the stile. Spitfire hath passed into Breakingdale to victual Galing, and hath overthrown our army that sat in siege thereof. Corineus drank a draught and spat. Fruit, said he, much bruit, little fruit. I would know by what warrant thou troublest me with this tattle, and I pleasantly disposing myself to mirth and recreation. Could it not wait till supper time? Ere Laxus might say more, was a great clatter heard without on the stairs, and in came those sons of Corund. Am I a king? Said Corineus, gathering his robe about him, and shall I be forced? Avoid the chamber. Then marking them stand silent with disordered looks, What's the matter? He said. Are ye ta'en with the swindle or the turn sickness? Or are ye out of your wits? Hemming answered and said, Not mad, my lord. Here's Diderus that held the Styleburg for us, ridden from the east as fast as his horse might wallop, and gotten here hard at the heels of the former messenger, with fresh and more certain advertisement, fresher by 4 days than that one's. I pray you hear him. I'll hear him, said Corineus, at supper time. Naught sooner, if the roof were afire. The land beneath thy feet's afire, cried Hemming. Juss and Brandoch, Dahar home again, and half the country lost thee ere thou heardst on't. These devils are home again. Shall we hear that, and still be swilboes? Corineus listened with folded arms. His great jaw was lifted up, his nostrils widened. For a minute he abode in silence, his cold blue eyes fixed as it were on somewhat afar. Then, home again, said he. And the east in a hubbub? And not unlikely. Thank Didarus for his tidings. He shall sweeten mine ears with some more at supper. Till then, leave me, unless ye mean to be stretched. But Laxus, with sad and serious brow, stood beside him and said, My lord, forget not that you are here, the vicar and legate of the king. Let the crown upon your head put perils in your thoughts, so as you may hearken peaceably to them that are willing to lesson you with sound and sage advice. If we take order tonight to march by Switchwater, we may very well shut back this danger and stifle it ere it wax to too much bigness. If, o' the contrary, we suffer them to enter into these western parts, like enough, without let or stay, They will overrun the whole country." Quirinius rolled his eye upon him. "Can nothing," he said, "prescribe unto thee obedience? Look to thine own charge. Is the fleet in proper trim? For there's the strength, ease, and anchor of our power, whether for victualling, or to shift our weight against 'em, which way we choose, or to give us sure asylum, if it were come to that. What ails thee? Have we not these 4 months desired naught better than that these demons should take heart to strike a field with us? If it be true that Jus himself and Brandok Daha have thrown down the castles and strengths which I had, I the east, and move with an army against us, why then I have them in the forge already, and shall now bring them to the hammer. And be satisfied, I'll choose mine own ground to fight them." "There's yet matter for haste in this," said Laxus. "A day's march, and we oppose them not, will bring them before Crothring." "That," answered Quirinius, "jumpeth pat with mine own design. I'll not go a league to bar their way, but receive 'em here where the ground lieth most favourable to meet an enemy, which advantage I'll employ to the greatest stretch of service, standing on Crothring's side, resting my flank against the mountain. The fleet shall ride in Orwath haven." Laxus stroked his beard and was silent a minute, considering this. Then he looked up and said, "This is sound generalship. I may not gainsay it." "It is a purpose, my lord," said Quirinius, "I have long had in myself stored by for the event. Let me alone, therefore, to do that my right is. There's this good in it too, as it befalleth. 'Twill suffer that dive dapper to behold his home again afore I kill him. I shall find it a sight for sore eyes, I think, after my tending on't." The 3rd day after these doings, the farmer at Holt stood in his porch that opened westward on Tiveranderdale. An old man was he, crooked like a mountain thorn, but a bright black eye he had, and the hair curled crisp yet above his brow. It was late afternoon, and the sky overcast. Tousle-haired sheepdogs slept before the door. Swallows gathered in the sky. Near to him sat a damosel, dainty as a meadow pipit, lithe as an antelope, and she was grinding grain in a hand. Mill singing the while, "Grind, mill, grind, Quirinius grinds us all," kinging it in widowed Crothring. The old man was furbishing a shield and morion cap, and other tackle of war lay at his feet. "I wonder thou wilt still be busy with thy tackle, O my father," said she, looking up from her singing and grinding. "If ill-tide, ill again, what should an old man do but grieve and be silent?" "There shall be time for that hereafter," said the old man. "But a little while is hand fain of blow." "They'll be for firing the roof-tree likely, if they come back," said she, still grinding. "Thou'rt a disobedient lass. If thou'dst but flit as I bade thee to the shield house up the dale, I'd force not a bean for their burnings." "Let it burn," said she, "if he be taken. What avail then for thee or for me to be a tarrying? Thou that art an old man and full of good days, and I that will not be left so." A great dog awoke beside her and shook himself, then drew near and laid his nose in her lap, looking up at her with kind, solemn eyes. The old man said, "Thou'rt a disobedient lass, and but for thee come sword, come fire, not a straw care I, knowing it shall be but a passing storm, now that my lord is home again." "They took the land from Lord Spitfire," said she. "Ay, hinny," said the old man, "and thou shalt see my lord shall take it back again." "Ay," said she, and still she ground, and still she sang, "Grind, mill, grind, Quirinius grinds us all." After a time, "Hist," said the old man, "was not that a horse-tread i' the lane? Get thee within doors till I know if all be friendly." And he stooped painfully to take up his weapon. Woefully it shook in his feeble hand. But she, as one that knew the step, heeding naught else, leapt up with face first red, then pale, then flushed again, and ran to the gate of the garth. And the sheepdogs bounded before her. There in the gate she was met with a young man riding a weary horse. He was garbed like a soldier, and horse and man were so bedraggled with mire and dust and all manner of defilement, they were a sorry sight to see, and so jaded both that scarce it seemed they had might to journey another furlong. They halted within the gate, and all those dogs jumped up upon them, whining and barking for joy. Ere the soldier was well down from the saddle, he had a sweet armful. "Softly, my heart," said he, "my shoulders somewhat raw." "Nay, 'tis naught to speak on. I've brought thee all my limbs home." "Was there a battle?" said the old man. "Was there a battle, father?" cried he. "I'll tell thee. Crothering side is thicker with dead men slain than our garth with sheep, aye the shearing time." "Alack and alack, 'tis a most horrid wound, dear," said the girl. "Go in, and I'll wash it and lay to it milfoil pounded with honey. 'Tis most sovereign against pain and loss of blood, and drieth up the lips of the wound, and maketh whole, thou'dst not credit how soon. Thou hast bled overmuch, thou foolish one, and how couldst thou thrive without thy wife to tend thee?" The farmer put an arm about him, saying, "Was the field ours, lad?" "I'll tell you all orderly, old man," answered he, "but I must stable him first." And the horse nuzzled his breast. "And ye must ballast me first. God shield us, 'tis not a tale for an empty man to tell." "Lass, father," said the damosel, "have we not one sweet sippet, either mouth, that we hold him here once more? And, sweet or sour, let him take his time to fetch us the next." So they washed his hurt, and laid kindly herbs thereto, and bound it with clean linen, and put fresh raiment upon him, and made him sit on the bench without the porch, and gave him to eat and drink cakes of barley meal and dark heather honey, and rough white wine of Tibarandadale. The dogs lay close about him, as if there was warmth there and safety whereas he was. His young wife held his hand in hers, as if that were enough, if it should last for aye. And that old man, eating down his impatience like a schoolboy chafing for the bell, fingered his partisan with trembling hand. "Thou hadst the word I sent thee, father, after the fight below Galing?" "Aye, 'twas good." "There was a council held that night," said the soldier. "All the great men together in the high hall in Galing, so as it was a heaven to see. I was one of their cupbearers, 'cause I'd killed the standard-bearer of the witches in that same battle below Galing. Methought 'twas no great thing I did, till after the battle. Look you, my lord's self standing beside me, and seeth he, Arnaud, aye, by my name, father, Arnaud, seeth, thou stunned down the pennon of Witchland, that gainst our freedom streamed so proud. 'Tis thy like shall best stead Demonland I these dog days, saith he. Bear my cup tonight for thine honour. I would, lass, thou'd seen his eyes that tide. 'Tis a lord, to put marrow in the sword arm, our lord. They had forth the great map of the world, of this Demonland, to study their business. I was by, pouring the wine, and I heard their disputations. 'Tis a wondrous map, wrought in crystal and bronze, most artificial, with waters a-glistering and mountains standing substantial to the touch. My lord points with sword. Here, saith, standeth Corineus by all sure tellings, and budgeth not from crothering. And, by the gods, saith, 'tis a wise disposition. For mark, if we go by Gashtondale, as go, we must to come at him. He striketh down on us as hammer on anvil. And if we will pass by toward the head of Thunderfirth, and here appointeth it out with sword, Down cometh on our flank, and every gate the land slope serveth his turn, and fighteth against us. I mind me o' those words, said the young man, 'cause my lord Brandoch. Daha laughed and said, Are we grown so strange by our travels? Our own land fighteth of the opposite party. Let me study it again. I filled his cup. Dear gods, but I'd fill him a bowl of mine own heart's blood if he required it of me, after our times together, father. But more of that anon. The stoutest gentleman and captain without peer. But Lord Spitfire, that was this, while vaunting up and down the chamber, cried out and said, 'Twere folly to travel his road prepared us. Take him o' that side he looketh least to see us, south through the mountains, and upon him in his rear, up from Marderdale. Ah, saith my lord, and be pressed back into Mirkdale hags, if we miss of our first spring. 'Tis too perilous, 'tis worse than Gashtondale. So went it, a nay for every yea, and naught to please 'em, till I the end, my lord Brandoch Daha, that had been long time busy with the map, said, Now that ye have threshed the whole stack, and found not the needle, I will show you my raid, 'cause ye shall not say I counselled you rashly. So they bade him say his raid. And he said unto my lord, Thou and our main power shall go by Switchwater way, and let the whole land's face blaze your coming before you. Ye shall lie to-morrow night in some good fighting stead, whither it shall not be to his vantage to move against you, haply in the old Sheelings above Renthwaite, or at any likely spot afore the road dippeth south into Gashtondale. But at pointed days strike camp and go by Gashtondale, and so up onto the side to do battle with him. So shall all fall out, even as his own hopes and expectations do desire it. But I, saith my lord Brandoch, Daha, with 700 chosen horse, will have fared by then clean along the mountain ridge from Transdale even to Erngate end, so as when he turneth all his battle northward down the side to whelm you, there shall hang above the security of his flank and rear that which he ne'er dreamed on. If he support my charging of his flank at unawares, with you in front to cope him, and he with so small an advantage upon us in strength of men, if he stand that, why then, good night. The witches are our masters in arms, and we may off-cap to him, and strive no more to right us. So said my lord Brandoch Daha, but all called him daft to think on't carry an army horseback in so small time cross such cursed ground, it might not be. Well, quoth he, sith you count it not possible, so much the more shall he. Cautious counsels never will serve us this tide. Give me but my pick of man and horse to the number of 700, and I'll so set this mask, you shall not desire a better master of the revels. So the end he had his way, and past midnight they were at it, I wis, planning and studying. At dawn was the whole army marshalled in the meadows below Moonmere, and my lord spake among them and told us he was minded to march into the west country and exterminate the witches out of Demonland, and he bade any man that deemed he had now his fill of furious war, and deemed it a sweeter thing to go home to his own place, say forth his mind without fear, and he would let him go, yea, and give him good gifts thereto, seeing that all had done manful service. But he would have no man in this enterprise who went not to it with his whole heart and mind. The damosel said, I wis there was not a man would take that offer. There went up, said the soldier, such a shout, with such a stamping, and such a clashing together of weapons. Land shook with unt, and the echoes rolled in the high corries of the scarf like thunder, of them shouting Crothering, Jus, Brandoch, Daha, lead us to Crothering. Without more ado was the stuff packed up, and ere noon was the whole army gotten over the stile. While we halted for day meal hard by Blackwood in Armadale, came my Lord Brandoch Daha a-riding among the ranks for to take his pick of 700 of our ablest horse, nor would not commit this to his officer, but himself called on each lad by name. When so he saw a likely one, and speared would a-ride with him. Ay, true, he gat never a nay to that spearing. My heart was a-cold lest he'd o'erlook me, watching him ride by as jaunty as a king, but reined in's horse and saith, Arnod, 'tis a bonny horse thou ridest. Could he carry thee to a swine hunt down from Ernegate, end-eyes the morning? I saluted him and said, Not so far only, lord, but to burning hell, so thou but lead us. Come on, saith he, 'tis a better gate, I shall lead thee to Crothering Hall ere eventide. So now was our strength sundered, and the main army made ready to march westward down Switchwater way, with the Lord Zig to lead the horse, and the Lord Varley, and my lord's self and his brother, the Lord Spitfire, faring in the midst amongst them all. And with them yonder outland traitor, Lord Grow, but I do think him more a stick of sugar paste than a man of war. And many gentlemen of worth went with them, Gismore Gleam of Justdale, a Star of Retre, and Bremery of Shawes, and many more men of mark. But there abode with my Lord Brandoch Daha, Arnund of Bai, and Tharmrod of Kennervy, Camerard of Stroppadon, Emeron Galt, Hesper Golthring of Elmersted, Stirkmere of Blackwood, Melchar of Strufey, Quaz's 3 sons from Dalney, and Stipmar of Fayuze, fierce and choleric young gentlemen, after his own heart, methinks, great horsemen, not very forecasting of future things afar off, but entertainers of fortune by the day, too rash to govern an army, but best of all, to obey and follow him in so glorious an enterprise. Ere we parted, came my lord to speak with my Lord Brandoch Daha, and my lord looked into the lift that was all dark cloud and wind, and quoth he, Fail not at the tryst, cousin. 'Tis thy word, that thou and I be finger and thumb, and never more surely than tomorrow shall this be seen. O friend of my heart, content thee, answereth my Lord Brandoch Daha. Didst ever know me, neglect my guests? And have I not bidden you to breakfast with me tomorrow morn in Crothering Meads? Now we of the 700 turned leftward at the Watersmeet up Transdale into the mountains, and now came ill weather upon us, the worst that ever I knew. 'Tis soft enow and little road enow in Transdale, as thou knowest, father, and weary work it was, with every deer track turned a watercourse, and underfoot all slush and mire, and naught for a man to see save white mist and rain above and about him, and soppy bent and water under's horse hoofs. Little there was to tell us, we were won at last to the top of the pass, and 'twere not the cloud blew thicker and the wind wilder about us. Every man was wet to the breech, and bare a pint of water in's 2 shoes. Whiles we were halted on the saddle, my Lord Brandoch Daha rested not at all, but gave his horse to his man to hold, and himself fared back and forth among us. And for every man he had a jest or a merry look, so as 'twas meat and drink but to hear or to behold him. But a little while only would he suffer us to halt. Then right we turned, up along the ridge, where the way was yet worse than in the dale had been, with rocks and pits hidden in the heather and slithery slabs of granite. By my faith, I think no horse that was not born and bred to might cross such country, wet or fine. He should be foundered, or should break his legs and his rider's neck ere he should be gotten 2 hours' journey along those ridges. But we that rode with my Lord Brandoch Daha to Crothering side were 10 hours riding so, besides our halts to water our horses and longer halts to feed 'em, and the last part of the way through murk night, and all the way either wind's teeth with rain blown on the wind like spray. and hail at whiles. And when the rain was done, the wind veered to the northwest and blew the ridges dry. And then the little bits of rotten granite blew in our faces like hailstones on the wind. There was no shelter, not o' the lee side of the rocks, but everywhere the storm wind baffled and buffeted us, and clapped his wings among the crags like thunder. Dear heaven, weary we were, and like to drop, cold to the marrow, nigh blinded man and horse, yet with a dreadful industry pressed on. And my lord Brandoch Daha was now in the van, now in the rear guard, cheering men's hearts, who marked with what blithe countenance himself did suffer the same hardships as his meanest trooper, like to one riding at ease to some great wedding feast, crying, "What, lads, merrily on! These fen toads of the Druima shall learn too late what way our mountain ponies do, go like stags upon the mountain." When it began to be morning, we came to our last halt, and there was our 700 horse hid in the corrie, under the tall cliffs of Erngate End. I warrant you we went carefully about it, so as no prying swine of Witchland, looking up from below, should espy a glimpse of man or horse o' the skyline. His Highness first set his sentinels and let call the muster, and saw that every man had his morning meal and every horse his feed. Then he took his stand behind a crag of rock whence he could overlook the land below. He had me by him to do his errands. In the first light we looked down westward over the mountain's edge, and saw Crothering and the arms of the sea. Not so dark, but we might behold their fleet at anchor in Arwath roads, and their camp like a batch of beehives, so as a man might think to cast a stone into below us. That was the first time I'd e'er gone to the wars with him. Faith, he's a pretty man to see, leaned forward there on the heather with chin on his folded arms, his helm laid aside so they should not see it glint from below, quiet like a cat, half asleep, you'd say. But his eyes were awake, looking down on Crothering. 'Twas well seen even from so far away how vilely they had used it. The great red sun leaped out of the eastern cloud banks. A stir began in their camp below, standards set up, men gathering thereto, ranks forming, bugles sounding, then a score of horse galloping up the road from Gashton Dale into the camp. His Highness, without turning his head, beckoned with his hand to me to call his captains. I ran and fetched 'em. He gave 'em swift commands. Pointing down where the Witchland swine rode out their battle, thieves and pirates who robbed his Highness' subjects within his streams with standard and pennons and glistering naked spears, moving northward from the tents. Then, in the quiet, came a sound made a man's heart leap within him, faint out of the far hollows of Gashtondale, the trumpet of my Lord Juss's battle call. My Lord Brandoch Daha paused a minute, looking down, then turned him about with face that shone like the morning. "Fair lords, a saith, now, lightly on horseback, for Juss fighteth against his enemies." I think he was well content. I think he was sure he would that day get his heart's scythe of every one that had wronged him. That was a long ride down from Erngate End. With all our heart's blood drumming us to haste, we must yet go warily, picking our way o'er that tricky ground, steep as a roof slope, uneven, and with no sure foothold, with sykes in wet moss, and rocks outcropping and shifting screes. There was naught but leave it to the horses, and bravely they brought us down the steeps. We were not halfway down ere we heard and saw how battle was joined. So intent were the Witchlanders on my lord's main army. I think we were off the steep ground and forming for the charge ere they were ware of us. Our trumpeters sounded his battle challenge. Who meddles with Brandoch Daha? And we came down on to Crothering's side like a rockfall. I scarce know what way the battle went, father. 'Twas like a meeting of streams in spate. I think they opened to us right and left, to ease the shock. They that were before us went down like standing corn under a hailstorm. We wheeled both ways, some gainst their right, that was thrown back toward the camp, the more part with my lord Brandoch, Daha, to our own right. I was with these in the main battle. His Highness rode a hot-stirring horse, very fierce and dogged. Knee to knee with him went Stirkmere of Blackwood to the one side, and Thamrod to the other. Neither man nor horse might stand up before him, and they faring as in a maze, now this way, now that, amid the thrumbling and thrusting of the footmen, heads and arms smitten off, men hewn in sunder from crown to belly, aye, to the saddle, riderless horses maddened, blood splashed up from the ground like the slush from a marsh. So for a time, till we had spent the vantage of our onset, and felt for the first time the weight of their strength. For Corineus, as it appeareth, was now himself ridden from the vanward, where he had beat back for a time our main army, and set on against my lord Brandoch Daha with horsemen and spearmen, and commanded his sling-casters besides to let freely at us and drive us toward the camp. And now, in the great swing of the battle, were we carried back to the camp again, and there was a sweet devil's holiday, horses and men tripping over tent ropes, tents torn down, crashes of broken crockery, and King Laxus come thither with sailors from the fleet, hamstringing our horses while Corineus charged us from the north and east. That Corineus beareth him in battle more like a devil from hell than a mortal man. Aye, the first 2 strokes of sword he overthrew 2 of our best captains, Romanard of Dolney and Emeron Golt. Stirkmere, that stood in's way to stop him, flung down with spear, horse and man. They say he met twice with my lord Brandoch Daha that day, but each time were they parted in the press ere they might rightly square together. I have stood in some goodly battles, father, as well thou knowest, first following my lord and my lord Goldry Brusco in foreign parts, and last year in the great rout at Crosby Outseeks, and again with my lord Spitfire when he smote the witches on Bremer Rapes, and in the murthering great battle under Thremne's Hew. But never was I in fight like to this of yesterday, never saw I such feats of arms. As witness Camarade of Stropodon, who with a great 2-handed sword hewed off his enemy's leg close to the hip, so huge a blow, the blade sheared through leg and saddle and horse and all. And Stirkmere of Blackwood, rising like a devil out of a heap of slain men, and those helm was lossen, and it was bleeding from 3 or 4 great wounds. I held off a dozen of the witches, with deadly thrusts and sword strokes, till they had enough, and gave back before him. 12 before 1, and he given over for dead, a while before. But all great deeds seemed trash beside the deeds of my lord Brandoch Daha. In one short while had he 3 times a horse slain stark dead under him, yet gat never a wound himself, which was a marvel. For without care he rode through and about, smiting down their champions. I mind me of him once, Wit's horse ripped and killed under him, and one of those Witchland lords that tilted at him on the ground as he leaped to his feet again. How caught the spear with 2 hands, and by main strength yerked his enemy out of the saddle. Prince Cargo it was, youngest of Corin's sons. Long may the Witchland ladies strain their dear eyes, they'll ne'er see yon Hendy lad come sailing home again. His Highness swapped him. Such a swipe of the neck-bone as he pitched to earth, the head of him flew i' the air like a tennis ball. And the twinkling of an eye was my lord Brandoch. Daha horsed again on's enemy's horse, and turned to charge him anew. You'd say his arm must fail at last for weariness, of a man so lithe and jimp to look on. Yet I think his last stroke that battle was not lighter than the first. and stones and spears and sword strokes seemed to come upon him with no more impression than blows with a straw would give to an adamant. I know not how long was that fight among the tents. Only 'twas the best fight I ever was at, and the bloodiest, and by all tellings 'twas as great work of the other part, where my lord and his folk fought their way up onto the side. But of that we knew nothing. Yet certain it is, we had all been dead. Men had my lord not there prevailed. As certain 'tis he had never so prevailed, but for our charging of their flank when they first advanced against him. But in that last hour, all we that fought among the tents thought each man only of this, how he might slay yet one more witch, and yet again one more, afore he should die. For Corineus in that hour put forth his might to crush us, and for every enemy there fell to earth two more seemed to be raised up against us. And our own folk fell fast, and the tents that were so white were one gore of blood. When I was a little tiny boy, father, we had a sport, swimming in the deep pools of Tiveranda water. That one boy would catch t'other and hold him under till he could no more for want of breath. Methinks there's no longing i' the world so sore as the longing for air, when he that is stronger than thou grippeth thee still under the water. Nor no gladness i' the world, like the bonny sweet air i' thy lungs again, when it letteth thee shoot up to the free daylight. 'Twas right so with us, who had now said adieu to hope, and saw all lost save life itself, and that not like to tarry long, when we heard suddenly the thunder of my lord's trumpet sounding to the charge. And ere our startled wits might rightly think what that portended, was the whole surging battle whipped and scattered like the water of a lake caught up in a white squall, and that massed strength of the enemy which had invested us round with so great a stream of shot and steel reeled first forward, then backward, then forward again upon us, confounded in a vast confusion. I trow new strength came to our arms, I trow our swords opened their mouths. For northward we beheld the ensign of Galing, streaming like a blazing star, and my lord's self in a moment, high advanced above the root, and Zig and a star, and hundreds of our horse, hewing their way toward us, whilst we hewed towards them. And now was reaping time for us, and time of payment for all those weary, bloody hours we had held on to life with our teeth among the tents on Crothering side, while they o' the other part, my lord and his, had with all the odds of the ground against them painfully and yard by yard fought out the fight to victory. And now, ere we well wist of it, the day was won and the victory ours, and the enemy broken and put to so great a rout as hath not been seen by living man. That false King Corineus, after he had tarried to see the end of the battle, fled with a few of his men out of the great slaughter, and as it later appeared, gat him a shipboard in Orwath harbour, and with 3 ships or 4 escaped to sea. But the most of their fleet was burned there in the harbour to save it from our hands. My lord gave command to take up the wounded and tend 'em, friend and foe alike. Among them was King Laxus, tarn up, stunned with a mace blow or some such. So they brought him before the lords where they rested, a little way down the side above the home meads of Crothering. He looked 'em all in the eye, most proud and soldier-like. Then a saith unto my lord, it may be pain, but no shame to us to be vanquished after so equal and so great a fight. Herein only do I blame my ill luck, that it denied me fall in battle. Thou mayest now, O Jos, strike off my head for the treason I wrought you 3 years ago. And since I know thee of a courteous and noble nature, I'll not scorn to ask of thee this courtesy, not to tarry, but take it now. My lord stood there like a war-horse after a breather. He took him by the hand. O Laxus, saith he, I give thee not thy head only, but thy sword. and Hera gave it him hilt foremost. For thy dealings with us in the battle of Katadza, let time that hath an art to make dust of all things, so do with the memory of these. Since then thou hast shown thyself still our noble enemy, and so shall we account thee still. Therewith my lord commanded, bring King Laxus down to the sea, and ship him aboard of a boat, for Corineus still held off the land with his ships, waiting no doubt to see if he or any other of his folk could yet be saved. But as King Laxus was upon parting, my lord Brandoch Daha, speaking with great show of carelessness, as of some trifling matter had by chance called to mind, My lord, saith he, I ne'er ask favour of any man. Only in a manner of return of courtesies, methought thou mightest be willing to bear my salutations to Corineus. Sith, I've no other messenger. Laxus answereth, he would freely do it. Then saith his highness, say to him, I will not blame him that he abode us not, eyes the field after the battle was lost, for that had been a simple part, flatly against all maxims of right soldiership, and but to cast his life away. But freakish fortune I blame, that twined us one from the other when we should have dealt together this day. He hath borne him in my halls, I am let to know. More the fashion of a swine or a beastly ape than a man. Pray him, come ashore ere you sail home, that I and he, with no man else to make betwixt us, may cast up our account. We swear him peace and grith, and a safe conduct, back to ships if he prevail against me, or if I so use him, that he cry for mercy. If he'll not take this offer, then is he a dastard, and the whole world shall so acclaim him. Sir, saith Laxus, I'll punctually discharge thy message. Whether he did so or no, father, I know not, but if he did, it seemeth it was little to Corineus's liking. For no sooner had his ship ta'en Laxus aboard than she hoised sail and put out into the deep, and so good-bye. The young man ceased, and they were all three silent a while. A faint breeze rippled the foliage of the oak woods of Tiveranderdale. The sun was down behind the stately thornbacks, and the whole sky from bourne to bourne was alight with the sunset glory. Dappled clouds, with sky showing here and there between, covered the heavens, save in the west, where a great archway of clear air opened between clouds and earth. Air of an azure that seemed to burn, so pure it was, so deep, so charged with warmth, not the harsh blue of noonday, nor the sumptuous deep eastern blue of approaching night, but a bright heavenly blue, bordering on green, deep, tender, and delicate as the spirit of evening. Athwart the midst of that window of the west, a blade of cloud, hard-edged and jagged with teeth coloured as of live coals and dead, fiery and iron-dark in turn, stretched like a battered sword. The clouds above the arch were pale rose, the zenith like black opal, dark blue and thunderous grey, dackled with fire. The second expedition to Impland, how? The Lord Just, not to be persuaded from his set purpose, found, where least it was to be looked for, upholding in that resolve. And of the sailing of the armament to Muelva, by way of the straits of Melikapkaz, that was the last ember of red summer burning when they cut them, that harvest on Crothering side. Autumn came, and winter months, and the lengthening days of the returning year, and with the first breath of spring were the harbours filled with ships of war, so many as had never in former days been seen in the land, and in every countryside, from the western isles to Byland, from Shalgreth and Kellialand to the headlands under Rimon Armon, were soldiers gathered with their horses and all instruments of war. Lord Brandoch Daha rode from the west, the day the pasque flowers first opened on the bluffs below Erngate End, and primroses made sweet the birch forests in Gashtondale. He set forth betimes, and hard he rode, and he rode into Galing by the Lion Gate about the hour of noon. There was Lord Juss in his private chamber, and greeted him with great joy and love. So Brandoch Daha asked, "What speed?" And Juss answered, 30 ships, and 5 afloat in Looking Haven, whereof all save 4 be dragons of war. Zig, I expect tomorrow with the Kilialand levies, Spitfire lieth at Owlswick with 1,500 men from the Southlands. Voley came in but 3 hours since, with 400 more. In sum, I'll have 4,000, reckoning ships' companies and our own bodyguards. 8 ships of war have I, said Lord Brandoch Daha in Stroppadon Firth, all busked and boon. 5 more at Awawath, 5 at Launegay in Morvey, and 3 on the Mealand coast at Stacray Oise, besides 4 more in the Isles. And I have 1,600 spearmen and 600 horse. All these shall come together to join with thine in Looking Haven at the snapping of my fingers. Give me but 7 days' notice. Juss gripped him by the hand. Bare were my back without thee, he said. In Crothering I've shifted, not a stone nor swept, not a chamber clean, said Brandoch Daha. 'Tis a muck pit. Every man's hand I might command, I set only to this. And now 'tis ready. He turned sharp toward Juss and looked at him a minute in silence. Then, with a gravity that sat not often on his lips, he said, Let me be urgent with thee once more. Strike, and delay not. Do him not again that kindness we did him aforetime, fribbling our strength away on the cursed shores of Impland, and by the charmed waters of Rivalry, so as he might, as secure as sleep, send Corsus hither and Corinius to work havoc, I the land, and so put on us. The greatest shame was ever laid on mortal men, and we not bred up to suffer shame. Thou saidst 7 days, said Juss. Snap thy fingers and call up thy armies. I'll delay thee not an hour. Ay, but I mean to Carca, said he. To Carca? Whither else? Said Juss. But I'll take my brother Goldry with us. But I mean first to Carca, said Brandoch Daha. Let my opinion sway thee once. Why, a schoolboy should tell thee, clear thy flank, and rear ere thou go forward. Juss smiled. I love this new garb of caution, cousin, said he. It doth most prettily become thee. I question, though, whether this be not the true cause, that Corinius took not up thy challenge last summer, but let it lie, and that hath left thee hungry still. Brandoch Daha looked him sidelong in the eye, and laughed. Oh, Juss, he said, thou hast touched me near. But 'tis not that. That was in the weird that bright lady laid on me, in the Sparrowhawk Castle in Impland forlorn, that he I held most in hate should ruin my fair lordship, and that to my hand should vengeance be denied, that I e'en must brook. Oh no, think only, delays are dangerous. Come, be advised, be not mullish. But the Lord Juss's face was grave. Urge me no more, dear friend, said he. Thou sleepst soft. But to me, when I am cast in my first sleep, cometh many a time the likeness of Goldry Blusco, held by a maleficial charm on the mountain top of Zorarach, that standeth apart, out of the sunlight, out of all sound or warmth of life. Long ago I made vow to turn neither to the right nor to the left until I set him free. He is thy brother, said Lord Brandoch Daha. Also is he mine own familiar friend, whom I love scarce less than thee. But when thou speakest of oaths, remember there's La Fieres too. What shall he think on us after our oaths to him 3 years ago, that night in Khaki. Yet this one blow should right him too. He will understand, said Juss. He is to come with Gaslark, and thou toldst me thou dost e'en now expect them, said Brandok Daha. I'll leave you. I cannot for shame say to him, Patience, friend, truly 'tis not to-day convenient, thou shalt be paid in time. By heavens, I'd scorn to entreat my mantle-maker so, and this our friend that lost all and languisheth in exile because he saved our lives. So saying, he stood up in great discontent and ire as if to leave the chamber, but Juss caught him by the wrist. Thou dost upbraid me most unjustly, and well thou knowest it in thy heart, and 'tis that makes thee so angry. Hark, the horn soundeth at the gate, and 'tis for Gaslark. I'll not let thee go. Well, said Lord Brandok Daha, have thy will. Only ask not me to plead thy rotten case to them. If I speak, it shall be to shame thee. Now thou'rt warned. Now went they into the high presence chamber, where was bright ladies not a few, and captains and noble persons from up and down the land, and stood on the dais. Gaslark the king walked up the shining floor, and behind him his captains and counsellors of Goblinland walked 2 by 2. The Prince Lafires strode at his elbow, proud as a lion. Blithely they greeted those lords of Demonland that rose up to greet them beneath the starry canopy, and the Lady Mevrian that stood betwixt her brother and Lord Juss, so as 'twere hard to say which of the three was fairest to look on. So much they differed in their beauty's glory. Grow, standing near, said in himself, I know a fourth. And were she but joined with these, then were the crown of the whole earth's loveliness fitted in this one chamber, in a right casket surely. And the gods in heaven, if there be gods indeed, should go pale for envy, having in their starry gallery no fair to match with these, not Phoebus Apollo, not the chaste huntress, nor the foam-born queen herself, but Gaslark, when his eye lighted on the long black beard, the lean figure slightly stooping, the pallid brow, the curls smoothed with perfumed unguents, the sickle-like nose, the great liquid eyes, the lily hand, he, beholding and knowing these of old, waxed in a moment dark as thunder with the blood-rush beneath his sun-browned skin, and with a great sweep snatched out his sword, as if without care or beware to thrust him through. Grow stepped hastily back, but the Lord Juss came between them. Let alone, Juss, cried Gaslark. Knows not this fellow what a vile enemy and viper we have here, a pretty perfumed villain, who for so many years did spin me a thread of many seditions and troubles, while he smooth-tongued gat money from me still. Blessed occasion! Now will I let his soul out. But the Lord Juss laid his hand on Gaslark's sword-arm. Gaslark, said he, leave off thy rages, and put up thy sword. A year ago thou'dst done me no wrong, but to-day thou'dst have slain me a man of mine own men, and a lord of Demonland. Now when they had done their greetings, they washed their hands, and sate at dinner, and were nobly served and feasted. And the Lord Juss made peace betwixt Grow and Gaslark, albeit 'twas no light task to prevail upon Gaslark to forgive him. Thereafter they retired them with Gaslark and Lafires into a chamber apart. Gaslark the king spake and said, None can gainsay it, O Juss, that this fight ye won last harvest tide was the greatest seen on land these many years, and of greatest consequence. But I have heard a bird sing, there shall be yet greater deeds done ere many moons be past. Therefore it is we came hither to thee, I and Lafires, that be your friends from of old, to pray thee, let us go with thee on thy quest across the world after thy brother, for sorrow of whose loss the whole world languisheth, and thereafter let us go with you on your going up to Khaki. "O just," said the prince, "we would not, in after days, that men should say, on such a time fared the demons into perilous lands, enchanted, and by their strength and valorousness set free the Lord Goldry Blasco. Or, haply, there ended their life's days in that glorious quest, but Gaslark and La Fureze were not in it. They bade their friends farewell, hung up their swords, and lived a quiet and merry life in Zahajaculo, so let their memory be forgot." Lord Juss sat silent a minute, as one much moved. "O Gaslark," he said at length, "I'll take thine offer without another word. But unto thee, dear prince, I must bear mine heart somewhat, for thou here art come not stressed in our quarrel to spend thy blood, only to put us yet deeper in thy debt. And yet small blame it were to thee shouldst thou in dishonourable sort revile me, as many shall cry out against me, for a false friend unto thee, and a friend forsworn." But the prince, La Fureze, brake in upon him, saying, "I prithee have done, or thou'd shame me quite. Whate'er I did in Kakir, 'twas but equal payment for your saving of my life in Lida Nanguna. So was all evened up betwixt us. Think then no more, on't, but deny me not to go with you to Impland. But up to Karka, I'll not go with you, for albeit I am clean broke with Witchland, against Corrund and his kin I will not draw sword, nor against my lady sister. A black curse on the day I gave her white hand to Corrund. She holdeth too much of our stock, methinks. Her heraldry is hearts, not hands, and giving her hand, she gave her heart. 'Tis a strange world." "La Fureze," said Juss, "we weigh not so lightly our obligation unto thee. Yet must I hold my course, having sworn a strong oath that I would turn aside neither to the right nor to the left until I had delivered my dear brother Goldry out of bondage. So swear I, or ever I went, that ill journey to Karka, and was closed in prison fast, and by thee delivered. Nor shall blame of friends, nor wrongful misprision, nor any power that is, shake me in this determination. But when that is done, no rest remaineth unto us till we win back for thee thy rightful realm of Pixieland, and many good things besides, to be a token of our love." Said the prince, "Thou doest right. If thou didst other, thou'dst have my blame." "And mine thereto," said Gaslark. "Do not I grieve, think'st thou, to see the Princess Armeline, my sweet young cousin, grow every day more wan of the cheek and pale, and all for sorrow, and teen for her own true love, the Lord Goldry Blasco? And she so carefully brought up by her mother, as nothing was too dear or hard to be brought to pass for her desire, thinking that a creature so noble and perfect could not be trained up too delicately. I deem today better than tomorrow, and tomorrow better than his morrow, to set sail for wide-fronted Impland." All this while, the Lord Brandoch Daha said never a word. He sat back in his chair of ivory and chrysoprase, now toying with his golden finger rings, now twisting and untwisting the yellow curls of his mustachios and beard. In a while he yawned, rose from his seat, and fell to pacing lazily up and down. He had hitched up his sword across his back under his 2 elbows, so that the shoe of the scabbard stood out under one arm and the jewelled hilt under the other. His fingers strummed little tunes on the front of the rich rose velvet doublet that cased his chest. The spring sunlight, as he paced from shine to shade and to shine again, passing the tall windows, seemed to caress his face and form. It was as if spring laughed for joy beholding in him one that was her own child, clothed to outward view with so much loveliness and grace, but full besides to the eyes and finger-tips with fire and vital sap, like her own buds bursting in the Brankdale coppices. In a while he ceased his walking, and stood by the Lord Grow, who sat a little apart from the rest. How thinkest thou, Grow, of our counsels? Art thou for the straight road or the crooked, for Kaka or Zora Raish? Of two roads, answered Grow. A wise man will choose ever that one which is indirect. But consider the matter, thou that art a great cragsman, think our life's course a lofty cliff. I am to climb it, sometime up, sometime down. I pray, whither leadeth the straight road on such a cliff? Why, now hither, for if I will go up by the straight way, 'tis not possible. I am left gaping whiles thou by crooked courses hast gained the top. Or if down, why 'tis easy and swift, but then no more climbing evermore for me. And thou, clambering down by the crooked way, shalt find me a dead and unsightly corpse at the bottom. Gramercy for thy me's and these, said Lord Brandoch Daha. Well, 'tis a most weighty principle, backed with a most just and lively exposition. How dost thou interpret thy maxim in our present question? Lord Grow looked up at him. My lord, you have used me well, and to deserve your love and advance your fortunes, I have pondered much how you, of Demonland, might best obtain revenge upon your enemies. And I daily thinking hereupon, and conceiving in my head divers imaginations, can devise no means but one that in my fancy seemeth best, which is this. Let me hear it, said Lord Brandoch Daha. Said Grow, 'twas ever a fault in you, demons, that you would not perceive how. 'Tis oft times good to draw the snake from her hole by another man's hand. Consider now your matter. You have a great force both for land and sea. Trust not too much in that. Oft hath he of the little force o'ercome most powerful enemies, going about to entrap them by sleight and policy. But consider yet again. You have a thing is mightier far than all your horses and spearmen and dragons of war. Mightier than thine own sword, my lord, and thou accounted the best swordsman in all the world. What thing is that? Asked he. Grow answered, Reputation, my lord Brandoch Daha. This reputation of you demons for open dealings even to your worst enemies. Tush, said he, 'tis but our way, the world. Moreover, 'tis, I think, a thing natural in great persons, of whatsoever country they be born. Treachery and double-dealing proceed commonly from fear, and that is a thing which I think no man in this land comprehendeth. Myself, I do think that when the high gods made a person of my quality, they traced between his two eyes something, I know not what, which the common sort durst not look upon without trembling. Give me but leave, said Lord Grow, and I'll pluck you a braver triumph in a little hour than your swords should win you in 2 years. Speak smooth words to Witchland, offer him composition, bring him to a council, and all his great men along with him. I'll so devise it, they shall all be suddenly taken off in a night, haply by setting upon them in their beds, or as we may find most convenient. All save Corund and his sons, them we may wisely spare, and conclude peace with them. It shall not by 10 days delay your sailing to Impland, whither you might then proceed with light hearts and minds at ease. Very prettily conceived, upon my soul, said Brandoch Daha. Might I advise thee, thou'dst best not talk to Jassai this manner. Not now, I mean while his mind's so bent on matters of weight and moment. Nor I should not say it to my sister Mevrian. Women will oft times take in sad earnest such a conceit, though it be but talk and discourse. With me 'tis otherwise. I am something of a philosopher myself, and thy jest ambleth with my humour very pleasantly. Thou art pleased to be merry, said Lord Grow. Many ere now, as the event hath proved, rejected my wholesome counsels to their own great hurt. But Brandoch Daha said lightly, "Fear not, my lord. Grow. We'll reject no honest redes of so wise a counsellor as thou." But, and here was a light in the eye of him, made Grow startle. Did any man with serious intent dare bid me do a dastard deed, he should have my sword through the dearest part of his body. Lord Brandoch Daha now turned him to the rest of them. "Just," said he, "friend of my heart, meseemeth you're all of one mind, and none of my mind. I'll e'en bid you farewell." "Farewell, Gaslark, farewell, La Furez." "But whither away?" said Just, standing up from his chair. "Thou must not leave us." "Whither but to mine own place," said he, and was gone from the chamber. Gaslark said, "He is much incensed. What hast thou done to anger him?" Mevrian said to Just, "I'll follow and cool him." She went, but soon returned, saying, "No avail, my lords, he is ridden forth from Galing, and away as fast as his horse might carry him." Now were they all in a great stew, some conjecturing one thing and some another. Only the Lord Just kept silence and a calm countenance, and the Lady Mevrian. And Just said at length to Gaslark, "This it is, that he chafeth at every day's delay that letteth him from having at Corineus. Certes, I'll not blame him, knowing the vile injuries the fellow did him, and his insolence toward thee, madam. Be not troubled. His own self shall bring him back to me when time is, as no other power should do, 'gainst his good will. He whose great heart heaven cannot force with force." And even so, the next night after, when folk were abed and asleep, Just, in his high bed-chamber, sitting late at his book, heard a bridle ring. So he called his boys to go with him, with torches to the gate. And there in the dancing torchlight came the Lord Brandoch Daha riding into Galing Castle, and somewhat of the bigness of a great pumpkin tied in a silken cloth hung at his saddle-bow. Just met him in the gate alone. "Let me down from my horse," he said, "and receive from me thy bedfellow that thou must sleep with by the lake of Rivalry." "Thou hast gotten it," said Just. "The hippogriff's egg, out of dual tarn, by thyself alone?" And he took the bundle right tenderly in his two hands. "Aye," answered he, "'twas where thou and I made sure of it last summer, according to the word of her little martlet that first found it for us. The tarn was frozen, and 'twas tricky work diving, and most villainous cold. It is small marvel. Thou'rt a lucky man in thine undertakings, O Just, when thou hast such an heart to draw thy friends to second thee." "I thought thou'dst not leave me," said Just. "Thought?" cried Brandoch Daha. "Didst ever dream I'd suffer thee to do thy foolishnesses alone? Nay, I'll come first to the enchanted lake with thee, and let be carkier I the meantime. Howbeit I'll do it 'gainst the stream of my resolution quite." Now was but 6 days more of preparation, and on the 2nd day of April was all ready in Looking Haven for the sailing of that mighty armament, 59 ships of war, and 5 ships of burthen and thrice, 2,000 fighting men. Lady Mevrian sat on her milk-white mare overlooking the harbour, where the ships all orderly rode at anchor, shadowy grey against the sun, bright shimmer of the sea, with here and there a splash of colour, crimson or blue or grass, green, from their painted hulls, or a beam of the sun glancing from their golden masts or figureheads. Grow stood at her bridle rein. The Galing road, winding down from Havershort Tongue, ran close below them, and so along the seashore to the quays at Looking Haven. Along that road the hard earth rang with the tramp of armed men and the tramp of horses, and the light west wind wafted to Grow and Mevrian on their grassy hill snatches of deep-voiced battle chants, or the galloping notes of trumpet and pipe. and the drum that sets men's hearts a-throb. In the van rode the Lord Zig, 4 trumpeters walking before him in gold and purple. His armour from chin to toe shone with silver, and jewels blazed on his gorget and baldric and the hilt of his long straight sword. He rode a black stallion, savage-eyed, with ears laid back and a tail that swept the earth. A great company of horse followed him, and half as many tall spearmen, in russet leather jerkins plated with brass and silver. "These," said Mevrian, "be of Kellier land and the shore steads of Arufirth, and his own vassalage from Ramaric and Amadardale. That is Hesper. Golthring rideth a little behind him on his right hand. He loveth 2 things in this world, a good horse and a swift ship. He on the left, he o' the helm of dull silver, set with raven's wings, so long of the leg, thou'd say, if he rode a little horse he might straddle and walk it, Stirkmere of Blackwood. He is of our kin, not yet 20 years old, yet since Crothring's side accounted one of our ablest." So she showed him all as they rode by. Peridor of Sule, captain of the Melanders, and his nephew Stipmar. Fendor of Shalgreth, with Emeron Galt, his young brother, that was newly healed from the great wound Corinius gave him at Crothering's side. These leading the shepherds and herdsmen from the great heaths north of Switchwater, who will hold by the stirrup, and so with their light bucklers and little brown swords go into battle with the horsemen full gallop against the enemy. Bremery, in his ram's horn helm of gold and broidered surcoat of scarlet velvet, leading the dalesmen from Onward Lythe and Tiveranderdale. Trentmar of Scorrodale, with the north-eastern levies from Byland and the Strands and Breakingdale. A star of Rattray, lean and lithe, bony-faced, gallant-eyed, white of skin, with bright red hair and beard, riding his lovely roan at the head of 2 companies of spearmen with huge iron-studded shields, men from about Drepaby and the southeastern dales, landed men and home men of Lord Goldry Blusco. Then the island dwellers from the west, with old Quoz of Dorney riding in the place of honour, noble to look on with his snowy beard and shining armour, but younger men their true leaders in war, Melchar of Strufy, great-chested, fierce-eyed, with thick brown curling hair, horsed on a plunging chestnut, his byrnie bright with gold. A rich mantle of creamy silk brocade flung about his ample shoulders, and Tharmrod on his little black mare with silver byrnie and bat's-winged helm. He that held Kenavi in fee for Lord Brandock Daha, keen and ready like an arrow drawn to the barbs. And after them the Westmark men, with Arnundov, by their captain, and after them 400 horse, not to be surpassed for beauty or ordered array by any in that great army, and young Camera riding at their head, burly as a giant, straight as a lance, apparelled like a king, bearing on his mighty spear the pennon of the Lord of Crothring. "Look well on these," said Mevrian as they passed by. "Our own men of the Side and Thunderfirth and Stropodon. Thou mayest search the wide world and not find their like for speed and fire, and all warlike goodliness and readiness to the word of command. Thou look sad, my lord." "Madam," said Lord Grow, "to the ear of one that useth, as I use, to consider the vanity of all high earthly pomps, the music of these powers and glories hath a deep underdrone of sadness. Kings and governors that do exult in strength and beauty and lustihood and rich apparel, showing themselves for a while upon the stage of the world and open dominion of high heaven, what are they but the gilded summer fly that decayeth with the dying day?" "My brother and the rest must not stay for us," said the lady. "They meant to go aboard as soon as the army should be come down to the harbour, for their ships be to sail out first down the Firth. Is it determined indeed that thou goest with them on this journey?" I had so determined, madam, answered he. She was beginning to move down towards the road and the harbour, but Grow put a hand on the rein and stopped her. Dear lady, he said, these 3 nights together I have dreamed a dream, a strange dream, and all the particulars thereof betokening heavy anxiety, increase of peril, and savage mischief, promising some terrible issue. Methinks if I go on this journey, thou shalt see my face no more. Oh, fie, my lord, cried she, reaching him her hand. Give never a thought to such fond imaginings. 'Twas the moon, but glancing in thine eye. Or if not, stay with us here and cheat fate. Grow kissed her hand and kept it in his. My lady Mevrian, he said, fate will not be cheated. Cog, we never so wisely. I do think there be not many extant that in a noble way fear the face of death less than myself. I'll go of this journey. There is but one thing should turn me back. And 'tis, said she, for he fell silent on a sudden. He paused, looking down at her gloved hand resting in his. A man becometh hoarse and dumb, said he, if a wolf hath the advantage first to eye him. Didst thou procure thee a wolf to dumb me when I would tell thee? But I did once, enough to let thee know. O Mevrian, dost thou remember Neverdale? He looked up at her. But Mevrian sat with head erect, like her patroness divine, with sweet cool lips set firm and steady eyes fixed on the haven and the riding ships. Gently she drew her hand from Grow's, and he strove not to retain it. She eased forward the reins. Grow mounted and followed her. They rode quietly down to the road, and so southward, side by side to the harbour. Ere they came within earshot of the quay, Mevrian spake and said, Thou'lt not think me graceless nor forgetful, my lord. All that is mine, oh, ask it, and I'll give it thee with both hands. But ask me not that I have not to give, or if I gave should give, but false gold, for that's a thing not good for thee nor me, nor I would not do it to an enemy, far less to thee, my friend. Now was the army all gotten a shipboard, and farewells said to Vol, and those who should abide at home with him. The ships rowed out into the firth all orderly, their silken sails unfurled, and that great armament sailed southward into the open seas under a clear sky. All the way the wind favoured them, and they made a swift passage, so that on the 30th morning, from their sailing out of Lookinghaven, they sighted the long grey cliff line of Impland, the more dim in the low-blown spray of the sea, and sailed through the straits of Melikafkas in column ahead, for scarce might 2 ships pass abreast through that narrow way. Black precipices shut in the straits on either hand, and the seabirds in their thousands whitened every little ledge of those cliffs like snow. Great flights of them rose and circled overhead as the ships sped by, and the air was full of their plaints. And right and left, as of young whales blowing, columns of white spray shot up continually from the surface of the sea. For these were the stately winged gannets fishing that sea strait. By 3s and 4s they flew, each following other in ordered line, many mast-heights high, and ever and anon one checked in her flight as if a bolt had smitten her, and swooped head foremost with wings half spread, like a broad barbed dart of dazzling whiteness, till at a few feet above the surface she clapped close her wings and cleft the water with a noise as of a great stone cast into the sea. Then in a moment up she bobbed, white and spruce with her prey in her gullet, rode the waves a minute to rest and consider, then with great sweeping wing strokes up again to resume her flight. After a mile or 2, the narrows opened, and the cliffs grew lower, and the fleet sped past the red reefs of Uaimnaz and the lofty stacks of Pashnamathra white with seagulls onto the blue solitude of the Didonian Sea. All day they sailed southeast with a failing wind. The coastline of Medikafkas fell away astern, paled in the mists of distance, and was lost to sight, until only the square-cloven outline of the Pashnamathran Islands broke the level horizon of the sea. Then these too sank out of sight, and the ships rowed on southeastward in a dead calm. The sun stooped to the western waves, entering his bath of blood-red fire. He sank, and all the ways were darkened. All night they rowed gently on under the strange southern stars, and the broken waters of that sea at every oarstroke were like fire burning. Then out of the sea to eastward came the day-star, ushering the dawn, brighter than all night stars, tracing a little path of gold along the waters. Then dawn, filling the low eastern skies with a fleet of tiny cockleshells of bright gold fire. Then the great face of the sun ablaze, and with the going up of the sun a light wind sprang up, bellying their sails on the starboard tack, so that ere day declined the sea cliffs of Muelva hung white above the spray, mist on their larboard bow. They beached the ships on a white shell strand behind a headland that sheltered it from the east and north. Here the barrier of cliffs stood back a little from the shore, giving place for a fertile dell of green pasture and woods clustering at the foot of the cliffs, and a little spring of water in the midst. So, for that night, they slept on board, and next day made their camp, discharging the ships of burthen that were laden with the horses and stuff. But the Lord Just was minded not to tarry an hour more in Muelva than should suffice to give all needful orders to Gaslark and Lafieres what they should do, and when expect him again, and to make provision for himself and those who must fare with him beyond those shadowing cliffs into the haunted wastes of the Maruna. Ere noon was all this accomplished, and farewell said, and those lords, Jus, Spitfire, and Brandoch Daha, set forth along the beach southward towards a point where it seemed most hopeful to scale the cliffs. With them went the Lord Grow, both by his own wish, and because he had known the Maruna aforetime, and these particular parts thereof, and with them went besides those two brothers-in-law, Zig and Astar, bearing the precious burden of the egg, for that honour and trust had just laid on them at their earnest seeking. So with some pains, after an hour or more, they won up the barrier, and halted for a minute on the cliff's edge. The skin of Grow's hands was hurt with the sharp rocks. Tenderly he drew on his lamb's wool gloves, and shivered a little, for the breath of that desert blew snell and fraw, and there seemed a shadow in the air southward, for all it was bright and gentle weather below whence they were come. Yet albeit his frail body quailed, even so were his spirits within him raised with high and noble imaginings as he stood on the lip of that rocky cliff. The cloudless vault of heaven, the unnumbered laughter of the sea, that quiet cove beneath, and those ships of war, and that army camping by the ships. The emptiness of the blasted wolds to southward, where every rock seemed like a dead man's skull, and every rank tuft of grass hag-ridden. The bearing of those lords of Demonland who stood beside him, as if naught should be of commoner course to them pursuing their resolve than to turn their backs on living land and enter those regions of the dead. These things with a power as of a mighty music made Grow's breath catch in his throat, and the tear spring in his eye. In such wise, after more than 2 years, did Lord Just begin his second crossing of the Maruna in quest of his dear brother, the Lord Goldry Blusco. Of the Lord Just's riding of the Hippogriff to Zora Raish, and of the ills encountered by him in that accursed place, and the manner of his performing his great enterprise to deliver his brother out of bondage, lulled with light-stirring airs too gentle soft to ruffle her glassy surface, warm incense-laden airs sweet with the perfume of immortal flowers, the charmed lake of Rivalry dreamed under the moon. It was the last hour before the dawn. Enchanted boats, that seemed builded of the glowworm's light, drifted on the starry bosom of the lake. Over the sloping woods, the limbs of the mountains lowered, unmeasured, vast, mysterious in the moon's glamour. In remote high spaces of night beyond, glimmered the spires of Kostra Pivraka and the virgin snows of Romshire and Kostra Belon. No bird or beast moved in the stillness. Only a nightingale singing to the stars from a coppice of olive trees near the Queen's pavilion on the eastern shore. And that was a note not like a bird's of Middle-earth, but a note to charm down spirits out of the air, or to witch the imperishable senses of the gods when they would hold communion with holy night and make her perfect, and all her lamps and voices perfect in their eyes. The silken hangings of the pavilion door, parting as in the portal of a vision, made way for that queen, fosterling of the most high gods. She paused a step or two beyond the threshold, looking down where those lords of Demonland, Spitfire and Brandok Daha, with Grow and Zig and a Star, wrapped in their cloaks, lay on the goiny dewy banks that sloped down to the water's edge. "Asleep," she whispered, "even as he within sleepeth against the dawn. I do think it is only in a great man's breast sleep hath so gentle a bed when great events are toward. Like a lily, or like a moonbeam strayed through the leafy roof into a silent wood, she stood there, her face uplifted to the starry night where all the air was drenched with the silver radiance of the moon. And now, in a soft voice, she began supplication to the gods, which are from everlasting, calling upon them in turn by their holy names, upon grey-eyed Pallas and Apollo, and Artemis the fleet huntress, upon Aphrodite, and Here, Queen of Heaven, and Ares, and Hermes, and the dark-tressed earth-shaker. Nor was she afraid to address her holy prayers to him who, from his veiled porch beside Acheron and Lethe Lake, binds to his will the devils of the undergloom. Nor to the great Father of all, in whose sight time from the beginning until today is but the dipping of a wand into the boundless ocean of eternity. So prayed she to the blessed gods, most earnestly requiring them that under their countenance might be that ride, the like whereof earth had not known, the riding of the hippogriff, not rashly and by an ass as heretofore, to his own destruction, but by the man of men who with clean purpose and resolution undismayed should enforce it, carry him to his heart's desire. Now, in the east, beyond the feathery hilltops and the great snow wall of Romshire, the gates were opening to the day. The sleepers wakened and stood up. There was a great noise from within the pavilion. They turned wide-eyed, and forth of the hangings of the doorway came that young thing new, hatched, pale and doubtful as the new light which trembled in the sky. Just walked beside it, his hand on the sapphire mane. High and resolute was his look, as he gave good morrow to the queen, to his brother and his friends. No word they said, only in turn gripped him by the hand. The hour was upon them, for even as day, striding on the eastern snowfields, stormed night out of high heaven, so, and with such swift increase of splendor was might bodily, and the desire of the upper air born in that wild steed, it shone as if lighted by a moving lamp from withinward, sniffed the sweet morning air, and whinnied, pawing the grass of the waterside and tearing it up with its claws of gold. Jas patted the creature's arching neck, looked to the bridle he had fitted to its mouth, made sure of the fastenings of his armor, and loosened in the scabbard his great sword. And now up sprang the sun. The queen said, "Remember, when thou shalt see the Lord thy brother in his own shape, that is no illusion, mistrust all else, and the almighty gods preserve and comfort thee." Therewith the hippogriff, as if maddened with the daybeams, plunged like a wild horse, spread wide its rainbow pinions, reared, and took wing. But the Lord Jus was sprung astride of it, and the grip of his knees on the ribs of it was like brazen clamps. The firm land seemed to rush away beneath him to the rear. The lake and the shore and islands thereof showed in a moment small and remote, and the figures of the Queen and his companions like toys, then dots, then shrunken to nothingness. And the vast silence of the upper air opened and received him into utter lowliness. In that silence, earth and sky swirled like the wine in a shaken goblet, as the wild steed rocketed higher and higher in great spirals. A cloud, billowy white, shut in the sky before them, brighter and brighter. It grew in its dazzling whiteness as they sped towards it, until they touched it, and the glory was dissolved in a grey mist that grew still darker and colder as they flew, till suddenly they emerged from the further side of the cloud into a radiance of blue and gold, blinding in its glory. So for a while they flew with no set direction, only ever higher, till at length, obedient to Jus's mastery, the hippogriff ceased from his sports and turned obediently westward, and so, in a swift straight course, mounting ever, sped over rivalry towards the departing night. And now indeed it was as if they had verily overtaken night in her western caves, for the air waxed darker about them, and always darker, until the great peaks that stood round rivalry were hidden, and all the green land of Zimiamvia, with its plains and winding waters and hills and uplands and enchanted woods, hidden and lost in an evil twilight. And the upper heaven was a teem with portents, whole armies of men skirmishing in the air, dragons, wild beasts, bloody streamers, blazing comets, fiery strakes, with other apparitions innumerable. But all silent, and all cold, so that Jus's hands and feet were numbed with the cold, and his mustachios stiff with hoarfrost. Before them now, invisible till now, loomed the gaunt peak of Sorcerers, black, wintry, and vast, still towering above them, for all they soared ever higher, grand and lonely above the frozen wastes of the Sarian glaciers. Jus stared at that peak till the wind of their flight blinded his eyes with tears, but it was yet too far for any glimpse of that which he hungered to behold. No brazen citadel, no coronal of flame, no watcher on the heights. Zora, like some dark queen of hell, that disdains that presumptuous mortal eyes should dare to look lovely on her dread beauties, drew across her brow a veil of thundercloud. They flew on, and that steel-blue pall of thunderous vapour rolled forth till it canopied all the sky above them. Jus tucked his two hands for warmth into the feathery armpits of the hippogriff's wings, where the wings joined the creature's body. So bitter cold it was. His very eyeballs were frozen and fixed, but that pain was a light thing beside, somewhat he now felt within him, the like whereof he never before had known, a death-like horror as of the houseless loneliness of naked. Space which gripped him at the heart. They landed at last on a crag of black obsidian stone, a little below the cloud that hid the highest rocks. The hippogriff, couched on the steep slope, turned its head to look on Jus. He felt the creature's body beneath him quiver. Its ears were laid back, its eye wide with terror. "Poor child," he said, "I have brought thee an ill journey, and thou but 1 hour hatched from the egg." He dismounted, and in that same instant was bereaved, for the hippogriff with a hoarse scream of terror took wing and vanished down the murk air, diving headlong away to eastward, back to the world of life and sunlight. And the Lord Jus stood alone in that region of fear and frost and the soul-quailing gloom under the black summit rocks of Sorcerers. Setting, As the queen had counselled him to do, his whole heart and mind on the dread goal he intended, he turned to the icy cliff. As he climbed, the cold cloud covered him, yet not so thick, but he might see 10 paces distance before and about him as he went. Ew sights enow, and enow to quail a strong man's resolution, showed in his path, shapes of damned fiends and gorgons of the pit running in the way, threatening him with death and doom. But Jus, gritting his teeth, climbed on and through them, they being unsubstantial. Then uprose an eldritch cry, "What man of Middle-earth is this that troubleth our quiet? Make an end! Call up the basilisks. Call up the golden basilisk, which bloweth upon and setteth on fire whatsoever he seeth. Call up the starry basilisk, and whatso he seeth it immediately shrinks up and perisheth. Call up the bloody basilisk, who, if he see or touch any living thing, it floweth away, so that naught there remaineth but the bones." That was a voice to freeze the marrow, yet he pressed on, saying in himself, "All is illusion, save that alone she told me of." And naught appeared, only the silence and the cold, and the rocks grew ever steeper, and their ice glaze more dangerous, and the difficulty like the difficulty of those barriers of Emshire, up which more than 2 years ago he had followed Brandoch Daha, and on which he had encountered and slain the beast Manticora. The leaden hours drifted by, and now night shut down, bitter and black and silent. Sore weariness bodily was come upon Jus, and his whole soul weary withal, and near to death, as he entered a snow-bedded gully that cut deep into the face of the mountain, there to await the day. He durst not sleep in that freezing night, scarcely dared he rest, lest the cold should master him, but must keep for ever moving and stamping and chafing hands and feet. And yet, as the slow night crept by, death seemed a desirable thing that should end such utter weariness. Morning came with but a cold alteration of the mist from black to grey, disclosing the snow-bound rocks, silent, dreary, and dead. Jus, enforcing his half-frozen limbs to resume the ascent, beheld a sight of woe too terrible for the eye, a young man helmed and graithed in dark iron, a black amour with goggle eyes and white teeth a-grin, who held by the neck a fair young lady kneeling on her knees and clasping his as in supplication, and he most bloodily brandishing aloft his spear of 6 foot of length, as minded to reave her of her life. This lady, seeing the Lord Jus, cried out on him for succour very piteously, calling him by his name and saying, "Lord Jus of Demonland, have mercy! And in your triumph over the powers of night, pause for an instant to deliver me, poor afflicted damosel, from this cruel tyrant. Can your towering spirit, which hath quarried upon kingdoms, make a stoop at him? Oh, that should approve you noble indeed, and bless you for ever." Surely the very heart of him groaned, and he clapped hand to sword, wishing to right so cruel a wrong. But on the motion he bethought him of the wiles of evil that dwelt in that place, and of his brother, and with a great groan passed on, in which instant he beheld sidelong how the cruel murderer smote with his spear that delicate lady, and detrenched and cut the 2 master veins of her neck, so as she fell dying in her blood. Jus mounted with a great pace to the head of the gully, and looking back beheld how black amour and lady both were changed to 2 coiling serpents. And he laboured on, shaken at heart, yet glad to have so escaped the powers that would have limed him so. Darker grew the mist, and heavier the brooding dread which seemed elemental of the airs about that mountain. Pausing, well-nigh exhausted, on a small stance of snow, Jus beheld the appearance of a man armed who rolled prostrate in the way. tearing with his nails at the hard rock and frozen snow, and the snow was all one gore of blood beneath the man. And the man besought him in a stifled voice to go no further, but raise him up and bring him down the mountain. And when Jas, after an instant's doubt betwixt pity and his resolve, would have passed by, the man cried and said, Hold, for I am thy very brother thou seekest, albeit the king hath by his art framed me to another likeness, hoping so to delude thee. For thy love's sake be not deluded. Now the voice was like to the voice of his brother Goldry, howbeit weak. But the Lord just bethought him again of the words of Sophonisba, the queen, that he should see his brother in his own shape, and naught else must he trust, and he thought, It is an illusion, this also. So he said, If that thou be truly my dear brother, take thy shape. But the man cried, as with the voice of the Lord Goldry Blasco, I may not, till that I be brought down from the mountain. Bring me down, or my curse be upon thee forever. The Lord Jas was torn with pity and doubt and wonder, to hear that voice again of his dear brother, so beseeching him. Yet he answered and said, Brother, if that it be thou indeed, then bide till I have won to this mountain top and the citadel of brass which in a dream I saw, that I may know truly thou art not there, but here. Then will I turn again and succour thee. But until I see thee in thine own shape, I will mistrust all. For hither I came from the ends of the earth to deliver thee, and I will set my good on no doubtful cast, having spent so much and put so much in danger for thy dear sake. So with a heavy heart he set hand again to those black rocks, iced and slippery to the touch. Therewith uprose an eldritch cry, Rejoice, for this earth-born is mad. Rejoice, for that was not perfect friend that relinquished his brother at his need. But just climbed on, and by, looking back, beheld how in that seeming man's place writhed a graceful serpent. And he was glad, so much as gladness might be in that mountain of affliction and despair. Now was his strength near gone, as day drew again toward night, and he climbed the last crags under the peak of Zora. And he, who had all his days drunk deep of the fountain of the joy of life and the glory and the wonder of being, felt ever deadlier and darker in his soul that lonely horror which he first had tasted the day before at his first near sight of Zora, while he flew through the cold air portent, laden, and his whole heart grew sick because of it. And now he was come to the ring of fire that was about the summit of the mountain. He was beyond terror or the desire of life, and trod the fire as it had been his own home's threshold. The blue tongues of flame died under his foot-tread, making a way before him. The brazen gates stood wide. He entered in. He passed up the brazen stair. He stood on that high roof floor which he had beheld in dreams. He looked as in a dream on him he had crossed the confines of the dead to find Lord Goldry Blasco keeping his lone watch on the unhallowed heights of Zora. Not otherwise was the Lord Goldry, not by an hair's breadth, than as Jas had aforetime seen him on that first night in Costre Bellorn, so long ago. He reclined, propped on one elbow on that bench of brass, his head erect, his eyes fixed as on distant space, viewing the depths beyond the starshine, as one waiting till time should have an end. He turned not at his brother's greeting. Jas went to him and stood beside him. The Lord Goldry Blasco moved not an eyelid. Jas spoke again and touched his hand. It was stiff and like dank earth. The cold of it struck through Jas's body and smote him at the heart. He said in himself, He is dead. With that, the horror shut down upon Jas's soul like madness. Fearfully he stared about him. The cloud had lifted from the mountain's peak and hung like a pall above its nakedness. Chill air that was like the breath of the whole world's grave, vast blank cloud barriers, dim, far forms of snow and ice, silent, solitary, pale, like mountains of the dead. It was as if the bottom of the world were opened and truth laid bare, the ultimate nothing. To hold off the horror from his soul, Jus turned in memory to the dear life of earth, those things he had most set his heart on, men and women he loved dearest in his life's days, battles and triumphs of his opening manhood, high festivals in Galing, golden summer noons under the Westmart pines, hunting morns on the high heaths of Meland, the day he first backed a horse, of a spring morning in a primrose glade that opened on Moonmere, when his small brown legs were scarce the length of his forearm now, and his dear father held him by the foot as he trotted and showed him where the squirrel had her nest in the old oak tree. He bowed his head as if to avoid a blow, so plain he seemed to hear somewhat within him, crying with a high voice and loud, "Thou art nothing, and all thy desires and memories and loves and dreams, nothing. The little dead earth-louse were of greater avail than thou, were it not, nothing as thou art nothing. For all is nothing, earth and sky and sea, and they that dwell therein. Nor shall this illusion comfort thee if it might, that when thou art abolished, these things shall endure for a season. Stars and months return, and men grow old and die, and new men and women live and love and die and be forgotten. For what is it to thee that shall be as a blown-out flame, and all things in earth and heaven, and things past and things for to come, and life and death, and the mere elements of space and time, of being and not being, all shall be nothing unto thee, because thou shalt be nothing for ever." And the Lord just cried aloud in his agony, "Fling me to Tartarus, deliver me to the black infernal furies. Let them blind me, seethe me in the burning lake, for so should there yet be hope. But in this horror of nothing is neither hope, nor life, nor death, nor sleep, nor waking, forever. Forever." In this black mood of horror he abode for a while, until a sound of weeping and wailing made him raise his head, and he beheld a company of mourners walking one behind another about the brazen floor, all cloaked in funeral black, mourning the death of Lord Goldry Blusco. And they rehearsed his glorious deeds, and praised his beauty and prowess and goodliness and strength, soft women's voices lamenting, so that the Lord Jus's soul seemed, as he listened, to arise again out of annihilation's waste. And his heart grew soft again, even unto tears. He felt a touch on his arm, and looking up, met the gaze of two eyes, gentle as a dove's, suffused with tears, looking into his from under the darkness of that hood of mourning, and a woman's voice spake and said, "This is the observable day of the death of the Lord Goldry Brusco, which hath been dead now a year, and we his fellows in bondage do bewail him, as thou mayest see, and shall so bewail him again year by year, whiles we are on life. And for thee, great Lord, must we yet more sorrowfully lament, since of all thy great works done, this is the empty guerdon, and this the period of thine ambition. But come, take comfort for a season, since unto all dominions fate hath set their end, and there is no king on the road of death. So the Lord Jus, his heart dead within him for grief and despair, suffered her take him by the hand and conduct him down a winding stairway that led from that brazen floor to an inner chamber, fragrant and delicious, lighted with flickering lamps. Surely life and its turmoils seemed faded to a distant and futile murmur, and the horror of the void seemed there but a vain imagination, under the heavy sweetness of that chamber. His senses swooned. He turned towards his veiled conductress. She, with a sudden motion, cast off her mourning cloak and stood there, her whole fair body bared to his gaze, open-armed, a sight to ravish the soul with love and all delight. Well nigh had he clasped to his bosom that vision of dazzling loveliness. But fortune, or the high gods, or his own soul's might, woke yet again in his drugged brain remembrance of his purpose, so that he turned violently from that bait prepared for his destruction, and strode from the chamber up to that roof where his dear brother sat, as in death. Jus caught him by the hand. "Speak to me, kinsman. It is I, Jus." "It is Jus, thy brother." But Goldry moved not, neither answered any word. Jus looked at the hand resting in his, so like his own to the very shape of the fingernails and the growth of the hairs on the back of the hand and fingers. He let it go, and the arm dropped lifeless. "It is very certain," said he, "thou art in a manner frozen, and thy spirits and understanding frozen and congealed within thee." So saying, he bent to gaze close in Goldry's eyes, touching his arm and shoulder. Not a limb stirred, not an eyelid flickered. He caught him by the hand and sleeve, as if to force him up from the bench, calling him loudly by his name, shaking him roughly, crying, "Speak to me, thy brother, that crossed the world to find thee, but he abode a dead weight in Jus's grasp." "If thou be dead," said Jus, "then am I dead with thee, but 'tis then I'll ne'er think thee dead." And he sat down on the bench beside his brother, taking his hand in his, and looked about him. Naught but utter silence. Night had fallen, and the moon's calm radiance and the twinkling stars mingled with the pale fires that hedged that mountain-top in an uncertain light. Hell loosed no more her denizens in the air, and since the moment when Jus had in that inner chamber shaken himself free of that last illusion, no presence had he seen, nor simulacrum of man or devil, save only Goldry, his brother. Nor might that horror any more master his high heart, but the memory of it was but as the bitter chill of a winter sea, that takes the swimmer's breath for an instant as he plunges first into the icy waters. So, with a calm and a steadfast mind, the Lord Jus abode there, his second night without sleep, for sleep he dared not in that accursed place, but for joy of his found brother, albeit it seemed there was in him neither speech nor sight nor hearing. Jus scarce wist of his great weariness, and he nourished himself with that ambrosia given him by the queen, for well, he thought, the uttermost strength of his body should now be tried in the task he now decreed him. When it was day, he arose, and taking his brother Goldry bodily on his back set forth. Past the gates of brass Jus bore him, and past the barriers of flame, and painfully, and by slow degrees, down the long northern ridge which overhangs the Sarian glaciers. All that day, and the night following, and all the next day after were they on the mountain, and well nigh dead was Jus for weariness, when on the second day, an hour or two before sundown, they reached the moraine. Yet was triumph in his heart, and gladness of a great deed done. They lay that night in a grove of strawberry trees under the steep foot of a mountain, some 10 miles beyond the western shore of Rivalry, and met Spitfire and Brandoch Daha, who had waited with their boat 2 nights at the appointed spot, about eventide of the following day. Now, as soon as Jus had brought him off the mountain, this frozen condition of the Lord Goldry was so far thawed that he was able to stand upon his feet and walk, but never a word might he speak, and never a look they gate from him, but still his gaze was set and unchanging, seeming, when it rested on his companions, to look through and beyond them as at some far thing seen in a mist, so that each was secretly troubled, fearing lest this condition of the Lord Goldry Blusco should prove remediless, and this that they now received back from prison. but the poor remain of him they had so much desired. They came Aland and brought him to Sophonisba the queen, where she made haste to meet them on the fair lawn before her pavilion. The queen, as if knowing beforehand both their case and the remedy thereof, took by the hand the Lord Just and said, O my lord, there yet remaineth a thing for thee to do, to free him throughly, that hast outfaced terrors beyond the use of man to bring him back. A little stone indeed to crown this building of thine, and yet without it all were in vain, as itself were vain without the rest that was all thine, and mine is this last, and with a pure heart I give it thee. So saying, she made the Lord Just bow down till she might kiss his mouth sweetly and soberly, one light kiss. And she said, This give unto the Lord thy brother. And Just did so, kissing his dear brother in like manner on the mouth, and she said, Take him, dear my lords, and I have utterly put out the remembrance of these things from his heart. Take him, and give thanks unto the high gods because of him. Therewith the Lord Goldry Blasco looked upon them, and upon that fair queen, and the mountains and the woods, and the cool lake's loveliness, as a man awakened out of a deep slumber. Surely there was joy in all their hearts that day. The fleet at Muelva. How the lords of Demonland came again to their ships at Muelva, and the tidings they learned there. For 9 days' space the lords of Demonland abode with Queen Sophonisba in Costra Belon, and beside the lake of Rivalry, tasting such high and pure delights as belike none else hath tasted, if it were not the spirits of the blessed in Elysium. When they bade her farewell, the queen said, My little martlets shall bring me tidings of you, and when you shall have brought to mere perdition the wicked regiment of Witchland, and returned again to your dear native land, then is my time for that, my Lord Just, whereof I have often talked to thee, and often gladded my dreams with the thought thereof, to visit earth again, and the habitations of men, and be your guest in many-mountained Demonland. Just kissed her hand and said, Fail not in this, dear queen, whatsoe'er betide. So the queen let bring them by a secret way out upon the high snowfields that are betwixt Costra Belorn and Romshire, whence they came down into the glen of the dark water that descends from the glacier of Tamam, and so through many perilous scapes after many days back by way of the Moruna to Muelva and the ships. There Gaslark and Lafires, when their greetings were done and their rejoicings, said to the Lord Just, We abide too long time here. We have entered the barrel, and the bunghole is stopped. Therewithal they brought him Hesper Golthring, who, 3 days ago, sailing to the straits for forage, came back again. But yesterday with a hot alarum that he met certain ships of Witchland, and brought them to battle, and gat one sunken, ere they brake off the fight, and took up certain prisoners, by whose examination, saith he, as well as from mine own perceiving and knowing, it appeareth Laxus holdeth the straits with 80 ships of war, the greatest ships that ever the sea bare until this day, come hither of purpose to destroy us. 80 ships, said Lord Brandoch. Daha. Witchland commandeth not the half, nor the third part, of such a strength since we did them down last harvest tide in Orwath haven. It is not levable, Hesper. Hesper answered him, Your Highness shall find it truth, and more, the sorrow on't and the wonder. 'Tis the scourings of his subject, allies, said Spitfire. We shall find them no such hard matter to dispatch after the others. Just said to the Lord, Grow, what makest thou of these news, my lord? I think no wonder in it, answered he. Witchland is of good memory, and mindeth him of your seamanship of Cartazza. He useth not to idle, nor to set all on one hazard. Nor comfort not thyself, my lord Spitfire, that these be pleasure galleys borrowed from the soft Bestrians or the simple Foliots. They be new ships builded for us, my lords, and our undoing. It is by no conjecture I say it unto you, but of mine own knowledge, albeit the number appeareth far greater than e'er I dreamed of. But, or ever I sailed with Corineus to Demonland, great buildings of an army naval was begun at Tenemos. I do very well believe, said King Gaslark, that none knoweth all this better than thou, because thyself didst counsel it. O Gaslark, said Lord Brandoch, Daha, must thou still itch to play at chop cherry when cherry time is past? Let him alone. He is our friend now. 80 ships eye the straits, said Juss, and ours 100. 'Tis well seen what great difference and odds there is betwixt us, which we must needs encounter, or else ne'er sail home again, let alone to Khaki. For out of this sea is no seaway for ships, but only by these straits of Melikafkaz. We shall do of Laxus, said Lord Brandoch. Dahaha, that he troweth to do of us. But Juss was fallen silent, his chin in his hand. Goldry Blusco said, I would allow him odds, and beat him. It is a great shame in thee, old Juss, said Brandoch Daha. If thou wilt be abashed at this, if that they be in number more than we, what then? They are in hope, quarrel, and strength far inferior. But Juss, still in a study, reached out and caught him by the sleeve, holding him so a moment or two, and then looked up at him and said, Thou art the greatest quarreller of a friend that ever I knew, and if I were an angry man, I could not abear thee. May I not 3 minutes study the means, but thou shalt cry out upon me for a milksop? They laughed, and the Lord Juss rose up and said, Call we a council of war, and let Hesper Goldthring be at it, and his skippers that were with him of that voyage, and pack up the stuff, for we will away o' the morn. If we like not these letters, we may pull back our lips, but no choice remaineth. If Laxus will deny us sea-room through Melikafkaz straits, I trow there shall go up thence a crash, which, when the king heareth it, he shall know it for our first banging on the gates of Karka. Tidings of Melikakagaz, of news brought unto Goris. The king in Kasi out of the south, here the Lord Laxus lying in the straits with his armada, held the fleet of Demonland prisoned in the Midland Sea. On a night of late summer leaning towards autumn, 8 weeks after the sailing of the demons out of Muelva as is afore it, the Lady Presmyra sate before her mirror in Corun's lofty bedchamber in Khaki. The night without was mild and full of stars. Within, yellow flames of candles, burning steadily on either side of the mirror, rayed forth tresses of tinselling brightness in twin glories, or luminous spheres of warmth. In that soft radiance, grains as of golden fire swam and circled, losing themselves on the confines of the gloom where the massy furniture and the arras and the figured hangings of the bed were but cloudier divisions and congestions of the general dark. Presmyra's hair caught the beams and imprisoned them in a tawny tangle of splendor that swept about her head and shoulders down to the emerald clasps of her girdle. Her eyes resting idly on her own fair image in the shining mirror, she talked, light. Nothings with her woman of the bedchamber, who, plying the comb, stood behind her chair of gold and tortoiseshell. Reach me yonder book, nurse, that I may read again the words of that serenade the Lord Grow made for me, the night when first we had tidings from my lord out of Impland of his conquest of that land, and the king did make him king thereof. The old woman gave her the book, that was bound in goatskin, chiselled and ornamented by the gilder's art, fitted with clasps of gold, and enriched with little gems, smaragds, and margery pearls, inlaid in the panels of its covers. Presmyra turned the page and read, "You meaner beauties of the night, that poorly satisfy our eyes, more by your number than your light, you common people of the skies. What are you when the moon shall rise? You, curious chanters of the wood, that warble forth Dame Nature's lays, thinking your passions understood. By your weak accents what's your praise, when Philomel her voice shall raise? You violets that first appear, by your pure purple mantles known, like the proud virgins of the year, as if the spring were all your own, what are you when the rose is blown? So, when my princess shall be seen, in form and beauty of her mind, by virtue first, then choice a queen, tell me, if she were not designed the eclipse and glory of her kind." She abode silent awhile. Then, in a low, sweet voice, where all the chords of music seemed to slumber, "3 years will be gone next Yuletide," she said, "since first I heard that song, and not yet am I grown customed to the style of queen." "'Tis pity of my lord grow," said the nurse. "Thou thinkest? Mirth sat oftener on your face, O queen, when he was here, and you were used to charm his melancholy and make a pish of his fantastical, humorous forebodings." "Oft doubting not his forejudgment," said Presmyra, "even the while I thripped my fingers at it. But never saw I yet that the lowering thunder hath that partiality of a tyrant, to blast him that faced it and pass by him that quailed before it. He was most deeply bound servant to your beauty," said the old woman. "And yet," she said, viewing her mistress sidelong to see how she would receive it, "that were a miss easily made good." She busied herself with the comb a while in silence. After a time she said, "O queen, mistress of the hearts of men, there is not a lord in Witchland, nor in earth beside. You might not bind your servant with one thread of this hair of yours. The likeliest and the goodliest were yours at an eye-glance." The Lady Presmyra looked dreamily into her own sea-green eyes imaged in the glass. Then she smiled mockingly and said, "Whom then accountest thou the likeliest and the goodliest man in all the stablished earth?" The old woman smiled. "O queen," answered she, "this was the very matter in dispute amongst us at supper only this evening." "A pretty disputation," said Presmyra. "Let me be merry. Who was adjudged the fairest and gallantest by your high court of censure?" "It was not generally determined of, O queen. Some would have my lord grow." "Alack, he is too feminine," said Presmyra. "Others, our lord the king." "There is none greater," said Presmyra, "nor more worshipful. But for an husband thou shouldst as well wed with a thunderstorm or the hungry sea. Give me some more." "Some chose the Lord Admiral." "That," said Presmyra, "was a nearer stroke. No skipjack nor soft marmalady courtier, but a brave, tall, gallant gentleman." "Aye, but too watery a planet burned at his nativity. He is too like a statue of a man. No, nurse, thou must bring me better than he." The nurse said, "True it is, O queen, that most were of my thinking when I gave him my choice, the king of Demonland." "Fie on thee!" cried Presmyra. "Name him not, so that was too unmighty to hold that land against our enemies. Folk say it was by foxish arts and practices, magical, was spilt on Crutheringside. Folk say 'twas divils and not horses carried the demons down the mountain at us." "They say," cried Presmyra, "I say to thee, he hath found it apter to his bent to flaunt his crown in Witchland than make him give him the knee in Galing. For a true king, both knee and heart do truly bow before him. But this one, if he had their knee, 'twas in the backside of him he had it, to kick him home again." "Fie, madam," said the nurse. "Hold thy tongue, nurse," said Presmyra. "It were good. Ye were all well whipped for a bunch of silly mares that know not a horse from an ass." The old woman, watching her in the glass, counted it. Best keep silence. Presmyra said under her breath, as if talking to herself, "I know a man should not have miscarried it thus. The old nurse that loved not Lord Corund and his haughty fashions, and rough speech and wine-bibbing, and was besides jealous that so rude a stock should wear so rich a jewel as was her mistress, followed not her meaning." After some time, the old woman spake softly and said, "You are full of thoughts to-night, madam." Presmyra's eyes met hers in the mirror. "Why may I not be so, and it likes me?" said she. That stony look of the eyes struck like a gong some 20-year-old memory in the nurse's heart. The little wilful maiden, ill to goad, but good to guide, looking out from that queen's face across the years. She knelt down suddenly and caught her arms about her mistress's waist. "Why must you wed then, dear heart?" said she, "if you were minded to do what likes you. Men love not sad looks in their wives. You may ride a lover on the curb, madam, but once you wed him, 'tis all t'other way, all his way, madam, and beware of, had I wist." Her mistress looked down at her mockingly. "I have been wed 7 years to-night. I should know these things." "And this night," said the nurse. "And but an hour till midnight, and yet he sitteth at board." The Lady Presmyra leaned back to look again on her own mirrored loveliness. Her proud mouth sweetened to a smile. "Wilt thou learn me common women's wisdom?" said she, and there was yet more voluptuous sweetness trembling in her voice. "I will tell thee a story, as thou hast told them me in the old days in Norvasp, to wile me to bed. Hast thou not heard tell how old Duke Hilmenes of Maltrione, among some other fantasies such as appear by night unto many in divers places, had one in likeness of a woman with old face of low and little stature or body, which did scour his pots and pans, and did such things as a maid-servant ought to do, liberally and without doing of any harm? And by his art he knew this thing should be his servant, still, and bring unto him whatsoever he would, so long time as he should be glad of the things it brought him. But this duke, being a foolish man and a greedy, made his familiar bring him at once all the year's seasons, and their several goods and pleasures, and all good things of earth at one time. So, as in 6 months' space, he being sated with these and all good things, and having no good thing remaining unto him to expect or to desire, for very weariness did hang himself, I would never have tarred me an husband, nurse, and I had not known that I was able to give him every time I would, a new heaven and a new earth, and never the same thing twice. She took the old woman's hands in hers, and gathered them to her breast, as if to let them learn, rocked for a minute in the bountiful infinite sweetness of that place. What foolish fears were these? Suddenly Presmyra clasped the hands tighter in her own, and shuddered a little. She bent down to whisper in the nurse's ear, "I would not wish to die. The world without me should be summer without roses. Carco without me should be a night without the starshine." Her voice died away like the night breeze in a summer garden. In the silence they heard the dip and wash of oar blades from the river without, the sentinel's challenge, the answer from the ship. Presmyra stood up quickly and went to the window. She could see the ship's dark bulk by the water-gate, and comings and goings, but naught clearly. "Tidings from the fleet," she said. "Put up my hair." And ere that was done, came a little page running to her chamber door, and when it was opened to him, stood panting from his running, and said, "The king, your husband, bade me tell you, madam, and pray you go down to him, eyes the great hall. It may be ill news, I fear." "Thou fearest, Patface?" said the queen. "I'll have thee whipped if thou bringest thy fears to me. Dost know aught? What's the matter?" "The ship's much battered, O queen. He is closeted with our lord the king, the skipper. None dare speak else. 'Tis feared the high admiral." "Feared!" cried she, swinging round for the nurse to put about her white shoulders her mantle of sendaline and cloth of silver, that shimmered at the collar with purple amethysts, and was scented with cedar and galbanum and myrrh. She was forth in the dark corridor, down by the winding marble stair, through the mid-court, hasting to the banquet hall. The court was full of folk talking, but naught certain, naught save suspense and wonder, rumour of a great sea fight in the south, a mighty victory won by Laxus upon the demons, Jus, and those lords of Demonland dead and gone, the captives following with the morning's tide. And here and there, like an undertone to these triumphant tidings, contrary rumours whispered low, like the hissing of an adder from her shadowy lair, all not well. The Lord Admiral wounded, half his ships lost, the battle doubtful, the demons escaped. So came that lady into the great hall, and there were the lords and captains of the witches all in a restless quiet of expectation. Duke Corsus lolled forward in his seat down by the crossbench, his breath stertorous, his small eyes fixed in a drunken stare. On the other side, Corund sat huge and motionless, his elbow propped on the table, his chin in his hand, sombre and silent, staring at the wall. Others gathered in knots, talking in low tones. The Lord Corineus walked up and down behind the crossbench, his hands clasped behind him, his fingers snapping impatiently at whiles, his heavy jaw held high, his glance high and defiant. Presmyra came to Hemming where he stood among 3 or 4 and touched him on the arm. "We know nothing, madam," he said. "He is with the king." She came to her lord. "Thou didst send for me." Corund looked up at her. "Why, so I did, madam. Tidings from the fleet, maybe somewhat, maybe naught. But thou'dst best be here fought." "Good tidings or ill, that shaketh not Carker walls," said she. Suddenly the low buzz of talk was hushed. The king stood in the curtained doorway. They rose up all to meet him, all save Corsus that sat drunk in his chair. The crown of Witchland shed baleful sparkles above the darkness of the dark fortress face of Goris the king, the glitter of his dread eyeballs, the deadly line of his mouth, the square black beard jutting beneath. Like a tower he stood, and behind him in the shadow was the messenger from the fleet with countenance, the colour of wet mortar. The king spake and said, "My lords, here's tidings touching the truth, whereof I have well satisfied myself, and it importeth the mere perdition of my fleet. There hath been battle off Melikavkaz in the Impland seas. Jus hath sunken our ships, every ship save that which brought the tidings, sunk, with Laxus and all his men that were with him." He paused then. "These be heavy news," he said, "and I'll have you bear 'em in the old Witchland fashion. The heavier hit, the heavier strike again." In the strange deformed silence came a little gasping cry, and the Lady Sriva fell a-swooning. The king said, "Let the kings of Impland and of Demonland attend me. The rest, it is commanded that all do get them to bed o' the instant." The Lord Corund said in his lady's ear as he went by, taking her with his hand about the shoulder, "What, lass, if the broth spilt, the meat remaineth. To bed with thee, and never doubt we'll pay them yet." And he with Corineus followed the king. It was past middle night when the council brake up, and Corund sought his chamber in the eastern gallery above the inner court. He found his lady sitting yet at the window, watching the false dawn over Pixieland. Dismissing his lamp-bearers that lighted him to bed, he bolted and barred the great iron-studded door. The breadth of his shoulders when he turned filled the shadowy doorway, his head well-nigh touched the lintel. It was hard to read his countenance in the uncertain gloom where he stood beyond the bright region made by the candlelight. But Presmyra's eyes could mark how care sat on his brow, and there was in the carriage of his ponderous frame kingliness and the strength of some strong determination. She stood up, looking up at him as on a mate to whom she could be true, and be true to her own self. "Well," she said. "The tables are set," said he, without moving. "The king hath named me his captain general in Carca." "Is it come to that?" said Presmyra. "They have hewn a limb from us," answered he. "They have wit to know the next stroke should be at the heart." "Is it truly so?" said she. 8,000 men, twice thine army's strength at one implant for us, all drowned? 'Twas the devilish seamanship of these accursed demons, said Corand. It appeareth. Laxus held the straits where they must go if ever they should win home again, meaning to fight 'em in the narrows, and so crush 'em with the weight of ships as easy as kill flies, having by a great odds the biggest strength both in ships and men. They o' their part kept the sea without, trying their best to tice him forth so they might do their sailor tricks, aye the open. A week or more he withstood it, till of the 9th day, the devil curse him for a fool, wherefore could not have had patience. O the 9th morning, weary of inaction and having wind and tide something in his favour, the Lord Corand groaned and snapped his fingers contemptuously. "Oh, I'll tell thee the tale to-morrow, madam. I'm surfeited with it to-night. The sum is, Laxus drowned, and all that were with him, and just with his whole great armament northward, bound for Witchland. And the wide sea's his, and we expect him any day? The wind hangeth easterly." "Any day," said Corand. Presmyra said, "That was well done to rest the command in thee. But what of our qualified young gentleman who had that office aforetime? Will he play of these terms?" Corand answered, "Hungry dogs will eat dirty puddings. I think he'll play, albeit he showed his teeth the first while." "Let him keep his teeth for the demons," said she. "This very ship was tar," said Corand, "and sent home by them in a bravado to tell us what betid. A stupid, insolent part shall cost him dear, for it hath forewarned us. The skipper had this letter for thee, gave it me monstrous secretly." Presmyra took away the wax and opened the letter, and knew the writer of it. She held it out to Corand. "Read it to me, my lord. I am tired with watching. I read ill by this flickering candlelight." But he said, "I am too poor a scholar, madam. I prithee read it." And in the light of the guttering candles, vexed with an east wind that blew before the dawn, she read this letter, that was conceived in manner following. "Unto the right high, mighty and doubted Prince Acta, Queen of Implande, one that was your servant, but now beings both a traitor and a manifold parjured traitor, traitor which heaven above doth abhor, the earth below detest, the sun, moon, and starries be ashamed of, and all creatures do curse and adjudge unworthy of breath and life, do wish on a lie to die your penitent. In heavy sorrow we do send you these advisals, which I require your majesty in humblest manner to ponder. Well, seeing else your manifest overthrow and ruin at hand, and albeit in Carsi you rest in security, it is certain you are there as safe as he that hingeth by the leaves of a tree in the end of autumnly, when as the leaves begin to fall. For in this late bataille in Melicafar's sea hath the home power of Witchlandi on the sea been beat, down and ruined, and the high admiral of our whole navee lost and dead, and the names of the great men of a county that were slain at the bataille I may not number nor of. The common sorte, mush lessi by Jesu, that the more part were drowned in the sea, which came not to sight. But of Daimun lande, not Ige, ships' companies were lossit, but with great puissance they do busker them for Kasi. Having with them this goldry blusko, strangely rescued from his Priasun house beyond the Tumbi, and a great army of the most strong and fell folker that ever I saw or heard speak of. Such is the day of war. Most noble princes, I will speak unto you not by a riddle or dark figure, but plainly, that you let not slip this occasion. For I have dreamt an evil dream, and one portending ruin unto Witchlande, being in my sleep on the very eve of this same battail, terrified and smitten with an appearing shape of Laxus armed crying in an high voice and loud, An Andy of all. Therefore most earnestly I do beseech your majesty and your noble lord. That was my friend before that. By my venomous trassoon I lost both you and him and allay. Take order for your proper safety, and the thing requires haste of your majesties. And this must you do, to fare straightway into your own country of Pixelande, and there raise force. Be you before these rebels and obstinates of Demulande in their proud attempts to strike at Wishland, and so purchase their friendship, who it is very certain will in power invincible stand before Kasi, or ever Wishland shall have time to put you down. This counsel I give you no inch full well that the power and dominion of the Demounds standeth now preeminent, and not to be withstowed. So tarry not by a Sinkingi shipper, but do as I say, lest all be lost. One thing's more I tell you, that shall haply enforce my counsel unto you. The heavy esti news of Ailey. 'Tis heavy news that such a false troker as he should yet supervive so many honest men, said Corrand. The Lady Presmyra held out the letter to her lord. Mine eyes dazzle, she said. Read thou the rest. Corrand put his great arm about her as he sat down to the table before the mirror and pored over the writing, spelling it out with one finger. He had little book learning, and it was some time ere he had the meaning clear. He did not read it out. His lady's face told him she had read all ere he began. This was the last news Gro's letter told her. The prince, her brother, dead in the sea fight, fighting for Demonland. Dead and drowned in the sea off Melikavkaz. Presmyra went to the window. Dawn was beginning, bleak and grey. After a minute she turned her head. Like a she-lion she looked, proud and dangerous-eyed. She was very pale. Her accents, level and quiet, called to the blood like the roll of a distant drum, as she said, Succours of Demonland, late or never. Corrand beheld her uneasily. Their oaths to me and to him, said she, sworn to us that night in Khaki. False friends, oh, I could eat their hearts with garlic. He put his great hands on her 2 shoulders. She threw them off. In one thing, she cried, Gro counselleth us well, to tarry no more on this sinking ship. We must raise forces, but not as he would have it, to uphold these demons, these oath-breakers. We must away this night. Her lord had cast aside his great wolfskin mantle. Come, madam, said he, to bed's our nearest journey. Presmyra answered, I'll not to bed. It shall be seen now, O Corrand, if that thou be a king indeed. He sat down on the bed's edge and fell to doing off his boots. Well, he said, everyone as he likes. As the good man said when he kissed his cow, day's near dawning. I must be up betimes, and a sleepless night's a poor breeder of invention. But she stood over him, saying, It shall be seen if thou be a true king. And be not deceived. If thou fail me here, I'll have no more of thee. This night we must away. Thou shalt raise Pixie-land, which is now mine by right. Raise power in thine own vast kingdom of Impland. Fling Witchland to the winds. What care I if she sink or swim? This only is the matter, to punish these vile perjured demons, enemies of ours and enemies of all the world. We need ride no journey for that, said Corrund, still putting off his boots. Thou shalt shortly see Jas and his brethren before Carca with 300 fighting men at back. Then cometh the metal to the anvil. Come, come, thou must not weep. I do not weep, said she, nor I shall not weep, but I'll not be tarn in Carca like a mouse in a trap. I'm glad thou'lt not weep, madam. It is as great pity to see a woman weep as a goose to go barefoot. Come, be not foolish. We must not part forces now. We must bide this storm in Carca. But she cried, There is a curse on Carca. Grow is lost to us and his good counsel. Dear my lord, I see something wicked, that like a thick dark shadow shadoweth all the sky above us. What place is there not subject to the power and regiment of Greece the king? But he is too proud. We be all too insolent overweeners of our own works. Carca hath grown too great, and the gods be offended at us. The insolent vileness of Corineus, the old dotard Corsus that must still be at his boozing can, these and our own private quarrels in Carci must be our bane. Repug not therefore against the will of the gods, but take the helm in thine own hand ere it be too late. Tush, madam, said he, these be but freybugs. Daylight shall make thee laugh at 'em. But Presmyra, queening it no longer, caught her arms about his neck. The odd man to perform all perfectly is thou. Wilt thou see us rushing on this whirlpool and not swim for it ere it be too late? And she said in a choked voice, My heart is near, broke already. Do not break it utterly. Only thou art left now. The chill dawn, the silent room, the guttering candles, and that high-hearted lady of his, daunted for an instant from her noble and equal courage, cowering like a bird in his embrace, these things were like an icy breath that passed by and quailed him for a moment. He took her by her 2 hands and held her off from him. She held her head high again, albeit her cheek was blanched. He felt the brave comrade grip of her hands in his. Dear lass, he said, I cast me not to be odd with none of these spawn of demon-land. Here is my hand, and the hand of my sons. Heavy wild breath remaineth us against demon-land, for thee and for the king. But sith, our lord, the king hath made me a king. Come wind, come wheat, we must weather it in Carci. True is that saw, for fame one maketh a king, not for long living. Presmyra thought in her heart that these were fey words, but having now put behind her hope and fear, she was resolved to kick against the wind no more, but stand firm and see what destiny would do.